councillors, staff and members of the gallery. I'd like to open our Standing Committee meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Our Heavenly Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thank you. Right, do we have any requests for leave of absence? Seem not, no apologies. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Duff to undertake the recognition of the traditional owners.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to acknowledge country and the traditional owners of the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka people, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Committee, item 4, declaration of interest. Do we have any declarable or prescribed conflict of interest to disclose to the committee today? Councillors? No? Okay, let's move on then. 5.1, the previous minutes of the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting held on the 7th of July 2021. I'll hereby move that the minutes of that meeting be received. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henshin. Any questions there? Councillors, concerns as to the accuracy of the minutes or anything else? No, if not, to the vote in favour. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.1, it's now my pleasure to welcome Councillor Jones to present the Roads and Drainage Portfolio Report.
Thank you. My pleasure to present the Roads and Drainage Report for the month of August. And these are some of the following and current planned works for the current month. Our Capital Works Program in Brampton Street, Wandoi, curb and channel upgrade, should be hopefully completed through the end of this month. Kingaroy Transformation Project, Kingaroy CBD upgrade, January through to October 22, continuing on, and there's some tremendous work being done there, particularly in the last few days with the Alfred Street seal going down. Looks very good. Williams Road, Banarkin, the upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard will be completed by the end of this month. Went down there and spoke to some of the residents on the side of the road at Williams Road on Friday, and they are ecstatic with the work that's being done down there, and I've got to commend the crew down there, the men and women. They have been well received down there and worked in well with the community. Our gravel resheeting, Bunya Highway, shoulder resheeting between Wandoi and Mergen, that also will continue through July and August. Cobbs Hill Road, Sunnynook, gravel resheeting also. Hayden's Road, Bowie, Hazeldean Road, South Nanango, and Mount Rurulan Road, all gravel resheeting, hopefully all completed by the end of September. Our patrol grading, we have graders running around in Benair, Strongs Road, Reedy Creek Road, Bowie, Chelmsford, Cushney, Dangor at Wilson's Road, Schubert's Road, Waiuna Road, Fairdale, Fix Crossing, and also Glendevon, Greenview, Highsville, Hodgeley. We have Whitman Road, Robin and Lee Road and Cooper Road out there, Cumbia, Manium, Johnston's Road, Glenrock Road, Wolski's Road, Hancock's Road and McMurdy's Road around Manium, Sandy Ridges, Wheatlands, Wandoi and Whyalla. Our roadside slashing and boom mowing, the slashing program has generally been completed for the road network. Current focus is on working on the state-controlled road network and specific defect slashing on Council's road network. The slashing program is to recommence in late September, depending on weather conditions. Some of our completed works for noting, our Capital Works program. We've done Alfred Street, Kingaroy, the curb and channel upgrade. I was up there the other day, that looks sensational. The people are also very happy. I was talking to somebody walking their dog up there and they were exceptionally happy. Blackbutt pedestrian bridge replacement, also another major improvement for the town of Blackbutt. That'll work in well with the street upgrades when we start that in the near future. Bayou Road, Wheatlands, we have widen, seal and overlay between Flats Road and Mondule Wheatlands Road. Another success story there. Cobb Street, Mergen, curb and channel upgrade. Gipp Street, Nanango, curb and channel. Haley Street, construction of a footpath from Jarrah Street to Fisher Street. Mergen High School pedestrian refuge, upgrade of school pedestrian facilities. That's a major improvement for safety up there for the children and staff of the Mergen High. The Nango pedestrian bridge replacement, also replaced the timber bridge near the Nango State School. That is another major improvement for the parents and children for the Nango School. Town and village entry signs, installation of new entry signs for towns and villages. I believe we're getting close to having all installed almost across the whole region. There's a couple of village signs still to go, but some very, very positive feedback in regards to the new town and village entry signs. State-controlled roads, vegetation clearing, various sections of roads have been completed. Our gravel reshedding program, we've done Harsh Road, Johnston's Road, Lucas Road, Morris Road, Memorandum, Gordonbrook Road, that was a formation grading and shoulder grading, Nistram Road, Oberleys Road. Our patrol grading, there's a big list there, Belogie, Barkers Creek, Flat, Bowie, Boyneside, Brooklands, all the way through Bull Camp, Chelmsford, Cushney, Glendevon, Inverlaw, Ironpot, Call, Marshlands, Mondure, Nanango, Silverleaf, South East Nanango, South Nanango, Tarong, Wattle Camp, Warroondon, and that's a major area covered there in regards to patrol grading on those roads. Our shoulder grading description, Bowie at Millar Road, at Hillsdale Road, Coolabunya, Peterson Drive and Coolabunya Road also. And we then move on to the roadside slashing and boom mowing. You can see a big long list there. These are all available on our website if anyone wants to look up and check. But going through Alice Creek, Chipinga, Chelmsford, East Nanango, Ellesmere, Gordonbrook, Kingaroy, Memorandum, Mondure, South Nanango, Tabinga, Tingura, Wattlegrove, Wandai and Marulan. And just to finish off, there'll be also some pictures up there that you can see of Rural Road in Nanango. It's an upgrade from unsealed section there. It'll be now sealed. You can see the work there done on pictures that'll be available again. Also the Blackbutt pedestrian bridge, you can see that across there, absolutely magnificent down there the other day. And also Alford Street, Kingaroy, curb replacement and bitumen seal again. And just quickly, everyone wants to talk about them. Potholes, they're right across the region. We have an issue. We're trying to get there, and I think the guys are doing a reasonably good job. I can quote, and I read on Toowoomba Regional Council, they have also issues exactly the same as us. All our residents out there, they want them all fixed and all that sort of stuff. They make comments about how much rates they pay and how much the service level and all that. So not saying it's a good thing, but it's good to see that the other councils have the same issues, and potholes are a big thing. And I do commend our staff to try and get across the region as well as they are. We have one truck down, I believe, at the moment, which doesn't help matters, but hopefully we can get that back on the road and get that fixed up. So please, for the people out there watching or anyone in the media, we are aware of the issues with the potholes, and our staff are doing the best they possibly can to get across the region and fix all potholes as they possibly can. And a quick shout out again to all the staff, men and women out there doing a wonderful job on our roads and all through council, every single staff member. So a big congratulations to them, and a thank you on behalf of myself for the roads and drainage. Thank you. I'd like my roads and drainage portfolio received for the month of August. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Well done. Have a seconder. Councillor Freiloff, thank you. Are there any comments or questions in relation to the report? Committee? No? Okay. Just, if I could, General Manager, in relation to the roadside slashing, and noting that the slashing program's generally be completed now, which is good to see. Works will mostly not recommence until late September. That being the case, I'm looking to perhaps move towards the question and possibly a motion as to whether we can apply those resources towards some of that intersection maintenance we talked about, particularly in relation to the mowing and the guidepost maintenance on some of those intersections across our local and state roads. I just want to clarify first, though, that our program's pretty well up to date, and we won't be recommencing till late September on most of the work other than state roads.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So with those resources, we did have a discussion with Parks as well about doing some additional maintenance. Essentially, at the moment, we're going to we have one of those operators replacing people on leave driving a water truck at the moment. We have a number of them just going through and doing specific defect slashing as well. So there are some parts of the network there, just see in the report, where there's a bit of high grass in a few areas where they are going to go through and try and clear some of the more difficult areas, but particularly the ones that you see between guideposts and top of culverts and those sort of things where we don't normally get through there. So we'll do a general tidy up. What I've asked Kevin to do is we're going to start changing out the guideposts on the intersections. So we've noticed the ones that get bent over quite a bit when they get hit. There is a different type of guidepost that we can use for those intersections, which has a rubber base, if that makes sense. So we are going to start to look at progressively working through those intersections as those resources come available. So we're happy to use the resources as they come available, and probably Mr. Mayor based on that priority. Parks, just talking with Mark, I think he's fairly flat out at the moment, trying to extend out into those 80 zones. But it probably would be a question for him around what resources they can use to spread out in that area. So from our point of view, we're probably chasing down the furniture side. As we move through and do a couple of those guideposts, we'll obviously give it a bit of a tidy up while we're there as well. So it'll just be a bit slower than what we have just due to those limitations. But happy to start progressing as resources are available, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's the answer I was looking for. So look forward to seeing that intersection work happen as and when it can with the resources that are available. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions about things that residents in Division 4 have asked me about. Just in relation to Fisher Street, I know it obviously was quite... the selection of curbing up Fisher Street was obviously decided for the maybe the era that it was constructed. It looks a lot like, from a distance, it looks like broken concrete, but when you get closer, you can tell there's some sort of cobblestone all the way up Fisher Street. And I've had a number of residents in that area raise concerns around their driveways and needing upgrading because of the cobblestones and breaking away and these sorts of things. I just wanted to know, in terms of the curb and channeling program, how do we get, or what's the process for councillors with an issue like that to identify that or find out if it's in the upcoming works program? And the other question I had also just around following up on your comments around potholes, Councillor Jones, probably previous to coming to council, I didn't realise how many there were until certainly in this job I notice them everywhere we go. So I think you become much more alert and aware, and I certainly recognise the challenges there. But I've had a lot of people raise questions around the Harris Road culvert intersection there, which is just before my division, and I understand we've allocated LRCI funding for that, and I just wanted an update as to when we can expect to see works in that area. It's bubbling up quite significantly after the recent rain. So they're my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the curb and channel, if any councillors has a defect identified for curb and channel, we already have it on our 5-year program. So which is great. It's great that we can actually answer that we have forward programs in front of us. So yeah, you're right. The cobblestone was probably an idea at some point to make it look different. But Kev's got it here, and I think in 25, 26, 26, 27, which will coincide with other works that we'll have planned for that section at the same time. So normally we'd like to do them with the reseal at the same time. So the biggest thing for us is we'll have them in the 5-year and 10-year programs. If council wants to bring it forward, it'll just be a matter of money and priority at the budget time, councillor. Harris Road, we're currently completing the pavement design for that section out there at the moment, and we'll be programming works in the next couple of months. So we'll come back to you with a date on that one, councillor, if we may. Just looking at our forward program and our pavement. So Kev can give an update on that in the next month's infrastructure update, if that's okay.
If I may, just in relation to the curb and channeling, so it's a defect identified for 26-27 and coincides with other works in the area. Is that related to the median strips and the actual pavement of Fisher Street, or is it possible to get a bit more information about that? Because that's such a highly trafficked road in Kingaroy, and I have noticed around the median strips, I reported it a little while ago, they really do need a paint and a refresh, and there's concrete sort of chipping off the edges of them. So I'm probably keen to have a look at Fisher Street a little bit more closely, and recognise that may need to be done offline, but yeah, would like to understand more about those works and what's planned for that area.
Yep. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I sent back a similar email to the Mayor yesterday. I think there was a question from the Mayor. What we'll do when we do that section through there is go through and rehabilitate the road as well. So similar to what we've done in the other programs, where we do a reseal, we'll go through, rehabilitate the failed sections, fix the curb and channel, and go through. I think we did the same in Cobb Street this year in Councillor Duff's area. We like to fix them up properly. With the medians, they probably, in all honesty, probably need a good clean, I think would be a good first start. It would just be a question of council if you wanted to upgrade them in a forward program for resurfacing, or if you want to bring them forward in that space, that's all. That's probably, it can be identified as a single project, obviously. It just depends how much you want to spend or how you want to refurb them.
Thanks, General Manager. As you'd be aware, I had put that question forward as to Fisher Street and into Moore Street in relation to the Kingaroy, in relation to the damage and need for replacement to those signage as well as the median strips. There is a lot of the concrete that is quite broken. A lot of the old yellow bollard type structures have been broken and now have fallen off or taken away. And of course the signage has got graffiti on it. Some of the signage has become quite quite illegible. Yep. Due to the fact that it's just basically just wear and tear and age and it's faded. So I'd certainly be keen to see us look to bring that forward in our renewals program at some stage, if we can, in terms of the median strips, the signage particularly, as part of a single project. If that could be considered, perhaps we could discuss that further at a future standing committee meeting.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, certainly happy for us to look at a refresh project through there. Just in regards to the signs, I followed up with the team yesterday. All the signs that were vandalised, we've replaced as many as we can that was available in stock. The rest are on order at the moment and will be installed as soon as possible. We have ordered the new roundabout signs for Moore Street roundabout, for the roundabout on River Road, which has had a damaged sign for some time, and also the roundabouts on River Road as well. Just to, if council's out and about, I don't know if everyone's noticed, but we have the new street blades going in all over the place at the moment. They look really good, so that those roundabout signs will be updated as soon as possible in line with that. So that work will happen regardless.
Thank you, GM. That'll be a good start to getting that area tidied up. As Councillor Shoemaker said, it's heavily trafficked. Councillor Duff.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple of motions I wanted to move, but I thought that we would move and second Councillor Jones's report before I do that. Is that the process?
We would need to, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep. Just while we're going on questions, I might just move through and get this report put to bed, and then we can move on to other matters, Councillor Duff. Just in relation to Walter Road, and probably I'll put three questions up. Walter Road, further works along Walter Road is the entryway into Kingaroy, including the parkland works. Haley Street, the livestock, getting the pig trucks out of Haley Street. And the third question I had was just confirming GM's Cumbia revitalisation plan $250,000. Just want to confirm that is in the CapEx budget for 21-22. So Walter Road, pig trucks in Haley Street, and Cumbia revitalisation. If I could just get a quick update on those. Thanks, GM.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I might get James to update that when he comes up for the Wandai roundabout, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's fine.
The Cumbia revitalisation we have in the budget for 22-23 under W4Q. So that's the current program. So we will finalise that design this year and then move into that project in next financial year. So council adopted that. I think Australia W4Q's got to come back to council, I think, is what was resolved. But it was 250,000 in W4Q for 22-23s in that program, Mr. Mayor. But James, thank you for giving us the questions in advance yesterday. James has got some notes for when he comes up for Wandai, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that'd be much appreciated.
And he'll be able to run you through.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, GM. Okay, how are we travelling with this one? So we've got a mover and a seconder. We ready to go to the vote? Okay, in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thanks again, Councillor Jones, for that comprehensive report. Right, let's move on to 6.2, the Kingaroy Transformation Project update. It's at
Mr.
page
Mr.
23.
Mayor, I
Oh,
had
sorry,
a couple-
Councillor Duff, yes. My apologies, you had something you wanted to
Oh,
put forward.
yeah, sorry. So on the back of what councillor Jones said about potholes, I'm continuing to receive a number of concerned residents' complaints about the process, the repairing, and I know that councillor Henson mentioned about the fact that we could coordinate it better because of the perception out there. Council's reputation is being damaged, as well as some of the vehicles. I've had complaints about people damaging their vehicles, and also putting in incident reports on damaged vehicles. So I would like to move a motion. And it was interesting what councillor Jones actually said about Toowoomba, because my motion does include Toowoomba Regional Council, but I just wanted to put it to the council that the committee recommend to council that a review be undertaken into council's road maintenance process with regards to pothole repairs, including options for better coordination of the two crews and investigation into new technologies being utilised by other councils. And I actually preface Toowoomba Regional Council because I know there has been some new technologies, and I just think that it's timely that we do an investigation into our potholes, because we get continuous complaints. And
Thanks, councillor. We'll take the motion first. Let's just get that motion on the agenda, and then we can seek a second, and then you have an opportunity to speak to the motion. That, recommends. Thank you, Linnell. Happy with that, councillor Duff? That's your motion. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Okay, councillor Duff, now give you the opportunity to speak to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've pretty well covered it. I just wanted to state that I think that we need to do something about it, because this is going on for a very, very long time, and particularly with the concerns I've had from well-respected ratepayers about the process. It'd be just good for councillors to get a better understanding of the process as part of the review. So thank you.
All right, thanks, councillor. Okay, any
Can I
speakers,
ask
Mr. CEO?
just a couple of questions? So we're not talking about an external review because we're not looking at contractors, correct? Okay, so just some parameters for this. So it's effectively a report back to council. Is that if your councillors are seeking a better understanding of this, just so we can, if it's adopted, and I'm not preempting what council does, but so what are you actually asking, that we bring a report back to council explaining what we do and what technologies are out there? Is that am I on the right
That's
page?
the intent of the motion.
So, if we could perhaps just change that a report be brought. Now, that would be brought to a future standing committee meeting. Yeah. Yes, that's a very good point, Mr. CEO. What sort of time frame would we be looking at? GM, is a couple of months sufficient to get that done?
Yeah, I think if we could aim for October, November, just a note for council, we are implementing our maintenance management system for pothole repairs, which is what our target was for December in our previous report. So that will pick up through this process. So that's a matter of implementation of the system. So yeah, we'd be happy to bring back a report to the November meeting. If we can bring it further, we can. Bring it early, we will. But we can do that.
Thank you, Jim. You comfortable with that, Councillor Duff? Okay. Councillor Potter is the seconder. Councillor Potter, you're comfortable with that? Okay. Speakers, Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to support this, but I will say that these conversations have taken place, probably started a couple of months ago in regards to what Councillor Henson referred to. And at the last general meeting, I actually said that I'd had concerns raised to me about the process and how we do the potholes, and we're filling some in, and then within 3 or 4 weeks when it rains, the same potholes reoccur. So, but I will say, and that the conversations have been had with the staff in infrastructure, the general manager and everybody else. So this is well and truly underway, and we have taken, I will commend the staff in the fact that they have listened, and this request here from Councillor Duff is, I'm happy to support it because I know that it's already in motion. So we should get a pretty good response by the end of October or November, whenever it is. So I just wanted to put it out there that the staff have already started this process. So well done, guys.
Other speakers? No one else at this stage? No? Okay. Happy to put that to the vote then. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thanks, Linnell. Thanks, Councillor Duff. Councillor Duff, please proceed.
I have one more, and I did send an email through to the general manager just about the Quiet Glen Road being changed to Silas Lane, and I believe that actually has already gone through council, but it hasn't been actioned. But I had Lorna Wheeland actually submitted a request to me, and she said that just recently we've actually put a sign up Quiet Glen Road, and that resolution or recommendation went through, I believe, quite some time ago to actually change that road. So I wanted to put a motion forward that the renaming of Quiet Glen Road to Silas Lane be actioned as a matter of priority. So.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor. Before we accept that motion, we might just get an update from the GM because there's an assumption there that it has been resolved by council historically. Do we have any records, GM, with short notice as to any resolution around that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we'd probably like to take that one on notice. We had a look at this yesterday. There's quite a bit of history on this of how there's been changed. There is a draft report based in relation to the requester to change that road name to Siler Lane. We found some stuff there yesterday where we believe it's been refused, possibly, and I believe it may have been refused in the past because there is a Siler Road close to that thing, so it was refused in line with the infrastructure guidelines. We would be happy to bring back a report to the next standing committee, Mr. Mayor. We'd just like to get our ducks in a row and just find out what actually was agreed and what hasn't been agreed, if that's okay. We have no issue with trying to get that together. We'd just like to make sure that we have got that right, so if we could.
Thanks, GM. That would seem to be a sensible solution. Are you happy to change your motion that a report be brought back?
Yeah, I didn't realise that. You think it was actually refused? I know it went to council, but I can't remember. I thought it got put forward as and agreed to, but.
Yeah, and if I've got that wrong, again, apologies to the council. We were a little bit confused looking through it yesterday, so we'd just like a time to get our ducks in a row to see what was actually agreed and what wasn't. Just noting that we just need a couple of days to actually have a look at what reports and get the history on it and that sort of stuff. So, but we did find some correspondence there that there was a rejection at some stage proposed because of Silas Road being within 50 kilometres of that laneway from a emergency services issue.
Thank you. Perhaps I should then just change that the renaming of Quiet Glen Road to Silas Lane be reviewed. Investigated?
So, yeah, look, what if council were to say that the report be brought back to the September Standing Committee meeting as to the renaming and full stop after Silas Lane, Linnell? Would you be happy with that, Councillor Duff, as the GM's recommended?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would.
Thank you. Okay. We'll get a seconder for that. We have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, just to throw a little bit of light on that, this has been ongoing for quite some years. There is a Silas Road in Belogie, and it was discussed actually early in this council's term as to why Silas Lane got changed, and it was brought to the attention that there is a Silas Road at Belogie. The residents out there, the reason that they're so adamant about this is those roads out there are all named from previous pioneers, and they're fairly passionate about them remaining that, or Silas Lane, because of the Siler family out there, they'd like to see that going back to that. And there was actually not a lot of reasoning as to why it got changed, and that's quite some time ago. But personally myself, if there could or something be done about that to Silas Lane, that'd be beneficial to our pioneers of the past.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So Kev has a draft letter that he has to I think there's 3 properties on that laneway. So if council's happy, we'll write to them in the interim to seek their feedback in advance of that, so that obviously they're the ones who are affected, have got to change their address. So we'll get that together with the history, and if council's happy, we'll just proceed to seek their feedback now, and that way we'll have that ready for council's consideration if that was suitable.
Yeah, in fact, very much appreciated. Thank you, GM. We can get that feedback in advance. Okay, so we've got the motion there. Let's go to the vote. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. GM, just while we're on roads, Sherbert Road, would you like me to deal with that later, or just an update on Sherbert Road? I was approached by Mayor Sando yesterday just wanting an update on that. Did you want to deal with that now before we move on?
Yep. Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So we have crews on Tingora Chelmsford this week, and also on some of the other high order roads. Sherbert Road's got works being done on there this week. We have received a letter from Zala, which we've written back to say that we'll prioritise that for reseal. So we'll start rehabilitation and prep on that road in the coming months in advance of that reseal program. But the maintenance will be occurring on there this week. The pave line, I believe, is on there at the moment, doing some repairs. The Flowcon is currently on Tingora Chelmsford, and the pave liner will be coming back through there. So they are working in together because they're just in relation to that. Like, we do have a 4-week program. So I actually physically saw the program yesterday. So there is some coordination to bring those 2 machines together where required. So they're working quite well. So that work should be concluded this week.
And GM, then just, roughly speaking, estimated time of completion for the resealing program in this year's works, when would we expect that to happen?
It'll probably be between November and January, Mr. Mayor. So we normally will do it through the summer period. So weather holding out for us, of course, but it'll be between that November, December, January, hopefully. As when
Thank
we'll
you.
start spraying.
I'm fine with that. I can just convey that back to the Mayor of Sherbert. Thank you. Much appreciated. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, as a follow-on from that, I'm just curious. I know we applied to Main Roads to actually have them take back maintenance of that particular road. What was their reasoning for them not taking back a road that actually leads to another town? Because everywhere I've known, they take every road that leads to a particular town. So what was their reasoning for not taking up this particular road?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is it didn't meet the criteria to become a state-controlled road. So there is a letter, I believe, that was circulated to the Sherbert Council or to the requester, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, there was, I think, a approach made by the local member to the minister, and I do believe the minister replied, and copy was sent to the Sherbert Council stating that it didn't meet the guidelines for reclassification as a state-controlled road. That was my understanding. I'm not sure what those guidelines are, Councillor. It'd be nice to know. Good question, Councillor.
I'm happy to circulate the letter. I think if we've got a copy, I thought we forwarded it to everybody, but I'll just double check that everyone got a copy. So,
Yeah, if you could circulate that letter to all councillors, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you, General Manager. Good question. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Okay, so we've got that done. Now we're up to the Kingaroy Transformation Project update. It's at page 23. Project Manager, Min, would you like to lead us through that? Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, good morning, Council. It's nice to be in today. We've had a probably very busy week on KTP. As you can see, The asphalt started last week with the profiler, and we virtually worked all through the long weekend and put in some big hours, which was fantastic to see. Generally, our progress, we're probably tracking about 4 or 5 weeks behind in program overall. My thoughts is that gap will be closed up fairly significantly between now and Christmas, particularly in Alfred Street where we are there at the moment. We're currently reviewing the program this week and next week to basically have a forward program into December to give a fair idea of what our progress will be between now and Christmas, with some fairly significant targets being set out for the group. We are accelerating quite strongly into Haley Street at the moment. The water main is probably going to be finished at least 5 weeks ahead of schedule. Which is basically the change to night works up there. Main Roads have given us a number of concessions through our working program in that area as well, which has been fantastic. But we're seeing we've got our local contractor up there doing night works at the moment, and doing a great job. Just with program, the asphalt's obviously going in down here on Alfred Street and the roundabout. The road there will reopen tomorrow. The roundabout is being poured as we speak, along with starting off the islands there as well. The island was poured up at the traffic lights there yesterday, so that will reopen through. Just with the pedestrian crossings, they will remain pedestrians give way to traffic for the time being. The reason is we won't be able to line mark them for a couple of weeks. What happens is the oil from the asphalt gets into the white paint and turns them brown. So we'll hold that out for a couple more weeks, and they'll be done during a nighttime period with the line markings. So very, very cool stuff down there on the asphalt. I shouldn't say cool because it's 160 degrees when it comes out of the truck. But for those who came down and had a look last week, I think they were very impressed with the work that's been done down there by Fulton Hogue and also by our council staff. Very, very, very high strength asphalt down there. It's essentially nearly 3 times the strength of normal concrete. So it's about 90 MPa in compressive strength. So even though it's a bit soft underneath in a few spots, the asphalt, essentially the concrete layers have taken that up. So we said to the guys, when they built Kingaroy Street in 1989, I think they would have killed for a product like this, given the amount of cement that they had to drop into the road to take it up. So we've done fairly well down there. Just with progress, so we'll see that we've essentially we'll be through the roundabout tomorrow. We'll be still pouring the rest of the concrete footpath on the Phone 8 side, which is on the opposite side of the shopping centre. That's going to get poured tomorrow. We expect that those crossings on that side will reopen in the next couple of days. And then basically we have the last pour on that section, which is out the front of Prices Plus, to complete the crossing link through there, which will happen early next week. So we're currently putting in stormwater and conduits into Alfred Street on the eastern side. And then we'll be looking to progress and change over to the southern side there probably late next week. So we'll have 2 sides opened up at once, which will be significantly quicker than what we have been travelling. Just with costs, there's an updated table there for council. We're currently doing a review through these again, particularly as I get my feet under the desk. Essentially, what we'll see is that I've made a provision for the contingency sum that we originally allocated for that Alfred Street section to be used, and that's in line with what I've seen with the previous report of the upgrade to the traffic light electrics that were there, and also some additional pavement works that we had to do on the weekend as well, which I think we haven't spent that yet, but I'm just marking it at the moment that I think that will be in that ballpark. So as we continue through to the review, just with consultation, just on the project risk again, I say to council, we probably have the same challenges that everyone is at the moment. Our local resources are very, very busy in our region, which is great for our economy, but it's very difficult to get contractors at the moment, which is not so good when you're running a construction and maintenance business. So, and it's not just this project; it's in general with the other projects that we see around at the moment as well. It's very hard to try and get them. We're competing with the building industry. We're also competing with works by some of our other major businesses or corporations within our region who are soaking up our resources. So it's a bit of a feast or famine at the moment. So we are looking to engage with more contractors which we'll need to keep our progress and accelerate our progress. Materials-wise, we've been working with suppliers. We're ordering well and truly in advance now. Again, everyone's having the same delivery issues. I don't think the latest COVID outbreak really helped logistics across Australia, especially on the East Coast. Anything out of New South Wales is a little bit difficult to get at the moment. It just takes a little bit longer. Obviously, they've got some issues down there. But generally, we're ordering well in advance now to make sure that we're not impacted by those shortages. I just touched on the forward program there before. We'll be providing further updates on it in the coming week. Consultations. Consultations have been really strong for the group in the last probably 2 to 3 weeks, particularly with the team partnering with the divisional councillors out and about on the streets. Have some wonderful feedback from the businesses in the CBD. I met 2 of them yesterday, which that were down here in Alfred Street. Very, very supportive and very, very understanding of the impact of construction, which was great. And it was also good to hear where we are not quite getting things right, that we are getting feedback around how we can correct those issues as well, particularly around pedestrian movements and that. So we have made a number of changes. I think we saw some new signs go up last week in Alfred Street asking people to support local business. Little things like that, and working in partnership with our local traders. I really I can't probably thank them enough, and just their communication with us is very much two-way at the moment. They're giving positive and negative feedback where required. And it's really good that we're able to work with those people, and I look forward to working with a number of the other businesses going forward. So just with the we've done a couple of videos that have been popping up around the place. Damien Martu did a parking one the other day, independent of us, which was great. That was a big assistance to us in our group. But also, I think there's a number of videos that'll be released later this week that are just being finalised at the moment, talking about construction progress. And we look forward to those being a regular thing. I think it's one thing that we can do better, and I think we are doing better in the last month, is communicating with the community. The other one too, just so everyone's aware, obviously we've got our community space consultation on down in the shopping centre this week. We had the divisional councillors there yesterday. James and his team were in there also. Young Cody's down there flying the flag by himself at the moment, so with Christy Board, so it'll be a good experience for him. So, but I would say too, it's great to see our team coming onto community consultation as well. I think that's important for future projects, and it's great for particularly our young graduates to learn around some of the lessons that we've learned, and I like to call them lessons rather than things that we could do better. It's what we learn all the time. So with that, obviously our common themes is particularly around pedestrian feedback around movement through the site. It will make a big difference once we reopen that roundabout tomorrow morning. That'll allow pretty well free movement through there, and obviously that southeastern side will open in the next couple of days, which will make a huge difference. So. We've had a couple of inquiries around the facades, and I'll probably let Councillor Shoemaker touch on that if that's okay. But we are seeing some positive signs from the businesses circling back around again, looking to move in this space, which is very, very positive. I think it's quite a positive thing out on the street at the moment. So, with that, Mr. Mayor, if that's me on my first round, if that's okay.
Very, very well done, thank you, GM, and good acting General Manager Brennan sitting down the back there. Welcome to you as well. Thank you very much, Project Manager. Okay, well, let's get this one up and then we can have a further conversation about it. So the recommendation is that the update report be received for information, be noted for information. Thanks, Councillor Potter as the mover, Councillor Fryloff as the seconder. Okay, further information, any questions from committee at this stage on the project report? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the comprehensive report. It's been absolutely fabulous partnering with Councillor Potter and the team, just getting that feedback off the ground, and I think we had a great day yesterday in the shopping mall. You meet everybody from across the region. It was a real coup to meet a gentleman who actually lives in Proston, who recalls driving a train into Kingaroy many, many years ago. So we had some really good conversations with him, and we've captured his details because he's very keen to be part of the official opening whenever that should happen. And I think Councillor Potter will agree it was lovely to catch up. He really loved the designs that we've put forward for the end of Kingaroy Street, really embracing the rail trail head. and the history there is around rail here in the South Burnett. He's known as Mr. In-Between because he operated all types of trains in his time with Queensland Rail, and spent extensive time operating from the Mergen station. So it was wonderful chatting with him. And I guess that's what I'm really enjoying about the conversations that we are having and the feedback that we're gauging. People are really genuinely interested in what's happening, and they're thinking about what's next. And I think that's really important for us as a council to really continue to have close in our minds what's the vision and the future of our region beyond this project, and how do we really maximise the opportunities. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to be out. I actually would like to see council adopt some sort of standing listening post or something like that in the mall more regularly. I think a lot of the feedback that we've gotten, I've also captured quite a bit for Kingaroy's town plan, Kingaroy's community plan, which I know the mayor ran his own consultation for that, but I've certainly got an extensive plan myself that I've worked with Councillor Potter, and just slotting those things in. What are the key priorities? Engagement like this is a great opportunity to check in with our community and see how they're really feeling. So I'd like to congratulate the team. There is so much happening, and I'd particularly like to call out and thank everyone on the crew. I was down there on Saturday morning, and I met people in and out of their yellow shirts who are council employees who are just excited about the work. And it was wonderful to have a chat with them on the street, and to see that commitment to a project like this was really exceptional. So thank you, GME and your team. You know, Kevin, I saw you down there. We've got all of our engineers. Everyone was there checking in, checking the work. It's just exceptional to see that level of buy-in from our team for this project. So thank you very much, and I really look forward to the street opening up and being able to drive on that new pavement. I cannot wait to have a go. You're absolutely right, GMN, I think I'll be doing a couple of blocks of the new pavement, actually, new asphalt. Been having some really positive conversations around facades, and there are some business owners in the street who are seriously considering what facades look like. So they've sort of come to me asking for some feedback around what's the colour palette, what's the design, and I know Green Engine, the team, did some great work on the back of the Chamber of Commerce facade workshop that was held last year. So I think we really need to pick that up again, probably working with Councillor Potter, pick that up and really embrace these conversations and opportunities, because people are genuinely interested. They're looking at their buildings, they're recognising, and it is something, in my view, that this council will have to consider into the future, is the cost of actually owning and maintaining a building in the CBD here in Kingaroy. I was talking to one landholder, it takes him 2 months of full-time rent just to cover his rates for the year. These are really enormous challenges when it comes to really driving growth in our region, and I think they're things that we need to unpack and understand. It's fabulous to see that level of buy-in and these buildings, these beautiful buildings in our street, everyone's turning their mind to what they could be. So I'd just like to congratulate the team. Thank you for the work that's been done. No, it's not easy to pull off a construction project like this in the middle of a pandemic, let alone in the middle of a construction boom. So thank you very much, and please keep up the good work.
Okay, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As a follow-on from Councillor Shoemaker's with regards to coming down on Saturday morning, it's really great to see there's been a couple of old gentlemen in their little scooters, and they are just amazing. They come down nearly every single day just to watch that construction, and because they used to work for council or they used to work in that field, and just to see them and have a chat with those. And I also met another lady who was down there, and all she did was buy a coffee and park her son in the pram right beside to watch the roadworks. And you see so many people that are doing that are buying their coffee, sitting down and just watching the roadworks. And it's become a source of entertainment for quite a few people. And I seriously cannot get the smile off my face every time I walk down that street and see those machines working. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful source of entertainment as well.
Let's go to the vote on this one then. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all.
Mr Mayor, council may like to consider, there's been as we're aware, through change of circumstances, there's been a change of personnel. If council's happy to resolve, I'd like to send a formal letter of thanks to Alan Christensen for all the work that he's done, and absolutely acknowledge him publicly for every effort he's made. We wouldn't have got this far without him, and looking forward to his engagement in the project on a different scale.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move a motion that the committee recommends to council a letter of thanks and acknowledgement be written to ATC project engineers, thanking project manager Alan Christensen, for his extensive support and efforts in the Kingaroy Transformation Project.
Thank you, councillor. Mr. CEO, can we just put that through a committee rather than having to go back?
Yeah, if council is fine, it would be just a letter I'll just generate. Well, not I'll just generate, but I would generate, and so that, and if we put that, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And again, Alan has done a mountain of work down there, and look forward to future engagements, how that works.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. Thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Councillor Potter, happy to second that. I don't imagine anyone wants to speak against it. So let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, General Manager Mian, come Project Manager, KTP. Thank you very much for your work. Thank you very much. And again, welcome, Acting General Manager Jed Brennan. Yeah, good to have you stepping into Aaron's shoes while he's off managing the KTP project for us, importantly. Thank you again. Okay, let's move on now then to 6.3, and it's the Haley Street Wando Roundabout Community Consultation at page 30. I think we'll take the liberty of handing straight over to you, Manager Darcy, to give us your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is in relation to some of the extensive work that's been done along the Bunya Highway in some of the beautification treatments of centre medians, including Kingaroy, but also this significant landmark for Wandai as well. The team have been working very busy in the background, acknowledging all the good work right across, whether it's Blackbutt or Kingaroy, but nonetheless, this project has also been steadily worked away. And as a result, we are seeking to go out to community consultation on this. We did a preliminary presentation to a Wandai business meeting back in June to really gauge some of the, first impressions and interests that those particular individuals had in relation to the community up there, and also just to really work with Councillor Henshin on trying to help get some solid feedback at that particular meeting. We're looking to go out to a broader consultation now for a period of time, and wanting to release the plans as part of this to help put in some mechanisms to go and collaborate that feedback, and then to provide to a future council meeting. So just as part of the material that you see before you in the report, we do have two options for consideration. What we do have is in the first option is around, with what you see on the plan there, is that the Bunya Highway comes from the left of the diagram and then heads to the top of the diagram. And then we've got Scott Street that heads down to the CBD, or the Mackenzie Street CBD area on the bottom right, and Coronation Park and the Art Gallery on the right-hand side of that diagram. So what we're looking at doing is working with Main Roads in the background here is around the concrete infill of those islands, but then looking to extend, very similar to what we've nominated for the River Road roundabout, and very, very similar to Rogers Drive, as well as around establishing concrete infill in the back of the curb there to help push back any traffic management concerns around maintenance and the infill of that roundabout. What we have there at the moment is a fair amount of area that's currently turfed, and we also have the Christmas tree and a street light and some nominal shrubbery through there. As part of the plans, we're looking at developing two options, and the first one is around. And the other item is around the slope of the roundabout. I forgot to mention. It's quite significant as you drive into that roundabout. From Scott Street and heading down so basically from the bottom right of the page to the top left of the page, there's reasonable level of slope there. And so we're trying to beautify and sort of make use of that slope as well, just to make it aesthetic and really maintain that landmark that Wandai possesses. So on the material before you, the islands heading into that roundabout, the colours that have been preliminary designed is around connecting it to the colours of Wandai that are more of that dark yellow ochre sort of colour mixed in with the black and onyx that is synonymous with a few of the town treatments that we are looking at this point in time. And also acknowledging that a lot of heavy vehicle traffic does use the Bunya Highway, and should those trailers jump the curb, that darker colour will have a better chance of hiding any of the tracking of wheel marks that may go through the inside on the odd chance that that we don't quite get the angles right. So if we just wanted to scroll down, Linnell, that'll assist in just portraying, illustrating I should say, just some of the observations that we have out there. This first option is around it's looking at maintaining a bit of a mound in the middle of the roundabout. On the western side of the roundabout is more of an infill it's that darker yellow and ochre colour, and then on the eastern side is more around just ground cover planting. So looking at trying to take on board a lot of the commentary around wanting to reduce operational costs with these particular landmarks, and seeing how we can come up with items that get away from the more frequent routine maintenance, but also wanting to get the balance right for some of these medians that we do have in our region. So item for consideration as part of this project is around the potential relocation of the Christmas tree up into Coronation Park. Acknowledging that Christmas trees are very well visualised through our region, this project would look to try and re-site that and make it a bit more tangible and a bit more touchable, I suppose, with Christmas trees. Kids like to go and be seen and have photos underneath them. Middle of the roundabout may not be the best location for something like that to occur, and seen as Coronation Park is the premier park of Wandai, in all honesty, and seeing that as a potential site for something like that. Working with Councillor Henshin on being able to achieve that in the community will help guide us towards that outcome, but we need to go and do this first. So with that probably is fairly comprehensive on the first item. The second option that we have, sorry Linnell, I might just continue scrolling down if that's okay. That just gives you some perspectives on that first option. The second option's around being able to put in a slight retaining wall on that northwestern side, and what that does is achieve something that's very, very different due to the significant slope of that roundabout. If we were to put in a retaining wall around, say, 3/4 of that roundabout, we'd actually be able to provide a vertical face, and being able to do something with that vertical face is quite powerful for the road users to actually see. It's something that nothing else exists in this region to support something like that at a very low height. That is, the beauty around Wandai is that it's got so much attraction on the outside of the roundabout. On the corners, you've got the art gallery and the Wandai name and walls on the southeastern and southern sides of that intersection, that you don't really need to over-dominate the middle of the intersection. You don't need trees because you've got so much on offer already through the roundabout, and you want to maintain that as much as possible. But with that low level retaining wall, looking at very simplistic options on what we can achieve there in connecting some of the themes that are really prominent with Wandoi. The town entry signs that we've done recently with Wandoi highlight that fairly well, with the connection back to the timber industry and the dingoes as well that are also prominent on the eastern side of the intersection. We might be able to do some illustrations to support some of the connection, certainly engaging with Councillor Henshin on the potential for Wandai's mate or some sort of symbolic gesture that could be imprinted into that wall, albeit at a very low height. It doesn't need to be written or in text or anything. It might just be a simple illustration, and just keeping it fairly simple is one opportunity that we can investigate further. So just if we want to scroll down, Linnell, that'd be appreciated. That helps provide council with a bit of an understanding on what I'm talking about here. Once again, the consideration of just low-level ground cover plantings, and one option we're also even considering further is at the base of that retaining wall, you'll see that there's some ground cover plantings about the potential of actually just removing them altogether and just concreting or bringing that wall out a little bit further such that we go straight from that ochre colour straight into the retaining wall such that we don't have that split level issue. These are all subtle things that can be improved as a part of the consultation process that we go and undertake, and allowing the community to really buy into the project and provide us with their thoughts on how we can actually improve what's been put forward for consideration, and then from there work in the background to get the design finalised and then bring it back to council for further consideration and delivery as part of the capital works program for this year. But first things first, we'd like to go out and do consultation in the coming weeks and bring it back to a future meeting. Apart from that, I'll leave it to you, Mr Mayor, for any further comments.
Thanks very much, Manager. Comments, Councillor Henshin. We'll let you go first. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the update. I'd also like to just bring to everyone's attention, we've had some fantastic feedback from the Wandoi Business Networking Group, and I thank my fellow councillors over the last couple of months for coming down there. They have a breakfast meeting, and might I add, next Tuesday there is another one, so I'll be pestering you to come along again. But out of those, each time there's been someone different. It's not just about the business owners in Wandoi, but there's been a great mix of people come. And fortunately, last time with Councillor Potter, I was the only gentleman at that meeting. The rest was all women there, which was wonderful to see. A great representation in Wandoi, and the feedback just in those meetings alone have been really good as to where we've come so far with this roundabout, and it's really exciting as to what we can do, and I think the input that they've had into that, and it's been tossed backwards and forwards, but the Gem Fossigan Club are now coming on board with wanting to know what's going on there as well. So they have the building in the railway terrace there. The Elaine Raffin, of course, from the Wandoi Business Networking Group, they've had some great communication in amongst their locals within the town, and that's going to proceed, and I look forward to that over the next month or two. I think we're going to come up with an absolutely sensational result there with what's been talked about down the track with the Wandai's mate, perhaps, statue there, which would be sensational. Coronation Park and the art gallery has the dingoes and the emu. The thought on the Christmas tree, it's really got some potential in that area to promote and highlight that area in Wandoi, and I think the work done by your team, James, so far to date, and what we've got in the pipeline with that retainer wall, personally myself, I think that's a great result. The community in Wandoi have said they don't want to clutter that. It's a busy roundabout. Winston Burrows and I have sat on that corner and watched trucks come in there. We don't need to complicate it too much. And I think with some of the designs that have been put forward here and what's proposed, that is a certainly win-win situation there for that roundabout and the township of Wandoi. It's pretty exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just, and I'm sure Councillor Henshin saw it, that Elaine Raffin, who's the president of the Wandoi Business Network, sent an email out to everybody, and she actually, and I'm just going to quote from her email, I would like to see a clean, smooth, concrete covered roundabout with nothing in it that blocks good 360-degree vision Having a plan that uses a clever design in different coloured concrete or bricks or tiles to make the area look really attractive would be a lot safer. Put the gardens in our parks, around our streets, etc., so we can enjoy them. So I'm thinking, and I'd like to, with the consensus of council, move a motion that one of the designs for the community consultation for Harley Street include an option for a complete concrete structure. So because and I can read the rest of it, the biggest concern is safety, and she's saying about gardens, but I'd like to just put a recommendation to council. Is that okay?
So councillor Duff, we have a recommendation there. Are you looking to perhaps modify what's there?
Amend it to put a dot point that one of the options that go to the community is to have a coloured, like concrete, appropriate. I've got the wording.
Mr CEO, could we just change perhaps that recommendation to add a third design? James, just pop that light off if you could.
Sorry.
Thank you. You're right. Happens all the time.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's two there, so I suppose the question I just asked the Mayor was, asked out loud is, is it possible to add a third design, James, which is just a pure concrete?
Yeah, we certainly can, Mark, our CEO. And yeah, we can add that as part of the package to go out for release with the community. Yeah, we should be able to achieve that. We may just need to delay the commencement of the consultation slightly in order to achieve that, but we certainly can do that.
Thanks. So it would just be the committee recommend, because this comes back to the ordinary at the end of the month, so you just add the stop point into the, I would think anyway, with add a third design. The other one, just for information, and I'm sure councillors will remember, but certainly in my last 3 years, there's been 2 petitions formally received by council about that Christmas tree, and they pretty much cancelled each other out. They were 50-50 to move it and then not to move it. So council received both petitions over the course of the time, and for the last Christmas period, status quo remained, but the town, with the number of signatures on the petition, was pretty equally split which way they were going to go. So you'll have a fair old conversation, I suspect, on the Christmas tree.
Could I, just on that, picking up on that note, Mr CEO, I'm just wondering where we could put in there and commence broad community or broad public consultation, because it's a big ask for the Wando Business Network to get around to the entire community. And I think some of these issues, particularly with the Christmas tree being relocated, is going to invoke a bit of community passion. So it'd be really good if we can take that out to the broader resident base and make sure that we're getting that information before council makes a call on that, as Mr CEO has indicated. If we could just put that. Thank you, Lynelle. Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in touching on Elaine Raffin's comments on that, and this has been discussed in different circles, in a flat concrete roundabout there, it actually lends itself to some fairly serious safety issues where traffic can just traverse straight through it. And we've seen that happen with some roundabouts where vehicles just go straight across. So that's just been something that's been discussed, and I know there's been, and as you say, there's always a 50-50 in community consultation, but in the conversations I've had, the Christmas tree up in the park has been widely received because they can actually benefit from it for the entire year in some shape or form, rather than just have it in the middle of the roundabout for 6 weeks of the year. So, yeah, look forward to that open community consultation, but there's been some extensive conversations held in relation to Elaine's flat concrete roundabout and just the safety issues of it.
Okay, yeah, so much more consultation to be had on this. All right, so I'll just, Councillor Jones, might just get this one up first. So we've got the recommendation as presented there. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Potter, thank you. Okay, now let's go to questions. Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just some comments in regards to the Christmas tree and the petitions. I just trying to struggle to remember, but I believe that the community was of the opinion maybe that we weren't going to reinstate the Christmas tree anywhere back in Wandai or move it to somewhere where they were whatever. But anyway, in regards to that, I'd taken up on James's point in regards to putting our consultation start back, keeping in mind that Councillor Henshins just invited us to a business meeting next Tuesday. Is it still a possibility that we could still go down and start discussions around that, knowing that we've got another one coming or whatever, or we can discuss that? Because I think it's important that we do get out there and start the conversation. I can't see why we wouldn't be able to take those two out initially and also have the conversation around a flat surface one that Councillor Duff has just brought to the table, and keeping in mind, Councillor, I'm keen to get it back out into the community and start that conversation and start the consultation in that. Is that a possibility, or is that, where do we stand on that?
No, thanks, councillor. The agenda report's public domain now. So anyone who wants to look at the agenda can see. So yeah, so even if whoever attended just takes a copy of the agenda report and the subsequent resolution, all this is public domain.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sure next Tuesday, I'm sure that will be one of the questions raised, and it'll be good to go down there and be prepared to have that conversation and start that initial consultation.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really looking forward to engaging the broader community around the design, because I can see this is, in my view, it's more than just a roundabout. It's actually quite placemaking infrastructure, and for Wandai being such the pretty little town that it is, I think it's absolutely paramount that we get this right, because an opportunity to build another roundabout like this won't come again. Once it's done, it's done. Whilst I can understand the concerns around a flat concrete roundabout, I think the essence of our corporate plan is really about livability and lifestyle. And I think in everything that I read around green infrastructure, that really is making a difference to the way in which our community feels. And it does have proven health and wellbeing benefits. And we know in the instances of the drought last year, particularly around Nanango, which just looks stunning at the moment, might I give a plug to our staff, all the new flowers have gone in. Community members, I know, were coming out and sitting by the footpaths just looking at our gardens during that desperate drought period. And I think gardens like these and opportunities like these, while I understand the safety concerns and issues around having raised infrastructure, I also equally trust the advice that we're given from the people who certainly know the traffic, safety around traffic and pedestrians. And I love the fact that there has been a little path considered here around trying to get safer access across the street, directing people to the appropriate places to cross the road with that roundabout. So I'm fully supportive of going ahead. I really love the design concepts that have been put forward, the colourings and the consideration of the plantings put here before us, and I look forward to more community consultation about it. I would like to acknowledge the work Councillor Henshin's done with the Wandai business community around getting that feedback. I think this is really important infrastructure for Wandai, and I just can't wait to drive in there and see something like this. As you turn around the corners, the gardens are already looking magnificent. So I think this is a wonderful evolution in the right directions. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay, just in wrapping up, clearly this will require significant broad community consultation. It is a major piece of infrastructure in the centre of the town, so I think there's a clear message today, Manager, that let's make sure this gets right across the broader Wandai community. The business networking group are certainly a good conduit to that, but to have additional consultation mechanisms, as we've done with KTP here in recent times, across the broader Wandai community, I think will be an important part of making sure we get this right. And if that takes a little bit longer, then will be time well invested, I would think, making sure that all the residents are giving an opportunity to have their say directly to council. Okay, well, we've got that one up, so let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.1, now like to introduce Councillor Froloff to present the Local Disaster Management, Water and Wastewater Portfolio Report.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Local Disaster Management Group update. The Local Disaster Management Group continues to monitor the current COVID-19 situation and will provide support to Queensland Health and Queensland Police Services as requested. Council's disaster management team and the LDMG collaboratively embarked on a journey to redevelop the LDMP and subplans to deliver modern, informative, understandable, succinct and practical plans. The LDMP will also become the interactive plan, which will be located on Council's website. The new LDMP and subplans meet the requirements and legislation, regulations, guidance and frameworks associated with the Queensland Disaster Management Arrangements, or the QDMA. The plan consists of disaster management philosophies which embraces prevention, preparedness, response and recovery procedures. It identifies strategies for disaster resilience and supports the Get Ready Queensland and Get Ready South Burnett messages. Every region is susceptible and at risk of local and major disaster events. The plan will provide Council the arrangements to ensure there is an effective and coordinated response to a disaster event, and to facilitate a speedy return to a safe and secure environment as soon as possible after that event. Strategic linkages to disaster management are included in the South Burnett Regional Council Corporate Plan for 2021-26 under a priority area and enhancing livability and lifestyles as stated in EC 15, continuing to provide proactive support for the LDMG. Now through to my water and wastewater portfolio report. The following are the current plans and works as of the 29th of the 7th, 2021. The KTP is Haley Street 200mm diameter water main replacement and SCADA and cyber security updates. All other 21-22 CapEx works are under planning. Dam restrictions and dam levels as of the 29th of the 7th, 2021. All towns remain on level 3 water restrictions. And the key highlights, the Council continues to monitor water storage throughout the region, and current levels are as follows. Bunduma, 25.7, BP, 7, Gordonbrook Dam, 66, and Boo Bear Dam, 33%. And that all other reactive works and that are available on Council's website if you'd like to have a look at them. And that is my LDMG and water and wastewater portfolio to be accepted by Council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Frolov. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Okay, are there any questions in relation to the contents of the report? Otherwise, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carry unanimously. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Councillor Frolov. Okay, now 7.2 is adoption of the local disaster management plan and subplans at page 48. So we might get an introduction from councillor and staff in relation to that if we could. It's been quite an interesting 12 months in local disaster management. So let's have a brief run through on that if we could. Thanks, General Manager, and then we'll go to councillors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to come and support you again to carry a little bit of resource while you're stretched across some very, very exciting projects. May I say also, without any disrespect to my General Manager colleagues, that it is wonderful to work with a council who fully appreciates how engaging roadworks are. I could not agree more, not detracting from the wonderful work that my colleagues deliver. Just by very, very brief introduction to the disaster management plan, I think it's worth noting that it has been some time, Donna, since we have refreshed the documentation. So we're largely not talking about major changes in process. We are talking about more manageable and usable resources to support our disaster management plan. So with that, I'll hand over to Donna. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jed. Thank you for this chance to give you an update just on the journey that we embarked on through the update of the local disaster management plan and subplans. As Jed alluded to, it had been a long time since we had done a full rewrite of the plan. So 2011 was the last time that we actually went through the whole plan. We actually engaged Sarah Dean from Strategic Disaster Solutions to assist with this rewrite. It was a 3-month journey that we did go through for this. So we had a lot of stakeholder engagement. So we basically went through all the plans that we did have. We went through from 21 subplans, and we actually looked at this and how we could reduce it to become more user-friendly when times of need and disasters occur. So basically what we did, we went through a planning meeting, we reviewed the documents that we currently had, we developed a draft framework, and then we went through on-site consultation with all of the LDMG stakeholders and council staff. So basically from that, what we did was we reduced the plans from 21 to 6. So that's huge. Like basically since 2011, those 21 subplans probably weren't even read. So what we tried to achieve is basically having the LDMG and council staff give us the input of what we actually require through, a disaster situation. So I do want to thank all of our LDMG agencies and key stakeholders and council staff that did embark on this journey. They provided a great deal of feedback, which was really great. Sometimes a plan sits on the shelf and doesn't get read. In this case, we worked with QPS, QFIS, the district, our emergency management coordinator, and all of the other agencies. So they did have input. I know that I did put the whole plan up and the sub-plans up, so I hope that maybe some bedtime reading might be had there and everyone can have a read of it, because it is good for everyone to understand what we actually do. So like I said, we reduced the plan. The recovery plan was a separate plan on its own. It was last updated in 2017. What we've actually done is gone from 160 pages to 14 pages. So it's been reduced dramatically, and by doing that, we've actually referenced hyperlinks to a lot of the legislation and state recovery plans, guidelines, all of those things. There's 19 plans and legislation that disaster management link back to. So instead of rewriting all of this words out of those plans, we've basically just hyperlinked so that people can just go and have a look at the actual plan that we're referencing. So we also reduced it by having checklists and flowcharts. Basically, if someone steps into a role of a local disaster coordinator, you don't want them to have to read the full plan. So they can pick it up, have a look at the flowchart, and actually step through what needs to happen. So yeah, basically we've gone from, like I said, 21 subplans to 6. So the overarching local disaster management plan, it has all of the preliminaries. So your governance, your membership, so all of your membership, your disaster risk management, prevention, preparedness, response and recovery. And like I said, we've embedded the recovery plan into the local disaster management plan. We don't have a standalone recovery plan now. The subplans, so the 6 that we have now is the activation and operation of the local disaster coordination centre. We've got the evacuation plan, we've got financial management, logistics, public health, public information and warnings. And I just wanted to have a shout out there as well. You might have noticed that we've actually used council staff that run those operations during disasters as the photo for the subplans. So that was really exciting to go out and actually make them all smile for the camera. So I do want to thank them all for getting on board with that, and also Christy Champney for taking those photos and making it personalised. So yeah, that's the journey that we've embarked on, and again, I just want to have a huge shout out to all those LDMG agencies, all of our stakeholders and council staff that did help with this. It's a big effort, so yeah, it's great.
Thank you, Donna.
All right, if anyone's
Councillor
got any
Fraloff.
questions.
Yeah, thank you, Donna.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. I did forget to thank the staff, the council staff and Donna and Cohen and everyone that they've put a lot of hard work into this, and it's fantastic. Actually, I quite enjoyed. I've read it, and I'm over it, and it's fantastic. And I'd just like to thank all the council staff and everyone that was involved. This is a fantastic disaster management plan. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Look forward, once this is adopted through our ordinary meeting, to then appropriately acknowledging formally Mr CEO, members of the LDMG, along with the staff who have worked so hard to bring this to fruition. Okay, do we have anyone else that wants to discuss the matter before we move it? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also acknowledge the work that's gone into this. Councillor Froloff, exceptional job as LDMG Chair, and Donna and your team and the agencies. I did read your plan. I read everything, and I guess I just have I have a newfound appreciation for what my council does in different circumstances and scenarios. The resources that we have, Mr. CEO, and how we can quickly put them to work in the instance of a disaster. So just like to acknowledge taking this back to from what you had to what you have now, often getting clearer and refining a document like this is a giant challenge. So I'd just like to really acknowledge you. I feel in the instance where there was an emergency, all of us could pick this up and quickly know where we need to be and what's happening on the ground. So thank you so much for all the effort. It's a fabulous plan, and I think it really does set our council up to be proactive in its response to disasters. No doubt since 2011 there were lots of learnings that have been put into this document, and you can tell reading through it's well thought out. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate Donna and the team on a fantastic effort. It's a huge document. Just on I just pointed out to Councillor Jones, just on page 95, maybe we just need to tweak some of those events, because we don't have Wine Food in the Park anymore. Just change that to Bacon Fest, and yeah, just maybe update that particular page on 95. That's all. But yeah, just that's just it. But yeah, not wanting to take anything away from this fantastic document. Just congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. And just on that, if anyone does read it and there is feedback that we need to update, each year we do a review. So the Inspector General Emergency Management, we are required to do an annual review. So if there are comments and feedback, that will be taken on, and next year when we go through that review, those changes will get made then too. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna. The presentation, very well done, and good to see that we've had the consolidation of those sub-plans. A very important step forward, no doubt. Okay, we have the recommendation as presented on screen. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Froloff. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter, as Deputy Chair. Okay, we'll no speakers for or against. We'll go to the vote. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Rightio. So we're up to 7.3, which is the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Organisation of Council's Urban Water Technical Committee dissolution and formation of the Wide Bay Burnett Urban Water Alliance at 265. General Manager and Manager of Water, would you like to give us an introduction? Thank you.
Mayor and councillors, I think this particular item is fairly self-explanatory. There are great benefits from collaboration, particularly in the water industry. So the recommendation to committee relates to maintaining continuation of those benefits. You'll see in the detail of that report that there is support provided by the Queensland Water Directorate, and the water businesses in the Wide Bay area have had a history of quite close collaboration. So we seek support for continuation of that through this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Manager. So we have the recommendation there. Do we have a mover? As presented. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can certainly understand the benefit of collaborating and sharing knowledge across the area. I think it's a wonderful initiative. I just had a couple of questions. Just in relation to the Wide Bay Burnett water businesses that would be involved, I was just wanting a little bit more clarification against who they actually are, who we're partnering with. And I also just was chasing, and that may have to come from the Mayor or Councillor Jones who attends the WebRock meetings, just where things are at with WebRock in this regard. They're probably my first questions.
Yeah, thanks, councillor. So just in terms of WebRock and the progression of that, might just give Mr. CEO shortly. We'll get a brief overview of that. But manager, industry, stakeholders involved in the committee, water businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't got a comprehensive list, but it involves the WebRock was involved with Gympie, Harvey Bay, North Burnett, and Bundaberg, and I may have missed one or two there, but they're the ones off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, manager. Mr. CEO, in terms of just quickly wrapping up, quick update on WebRock moving forward. Thank you.
Be very quick, Mayor. The RRT, actually, it's something, so we had contact from the RRTG yesterday, I think, Wednesday? Yeah, Tuesday, 10th of August, requesting a meeting, so for next week, which we just need to talk to the two delegates, so that will be the first RRTG meeting we've had for some considerable time. Most of the members, so that still involves Bundaberg. The actual rock itself, so RRTG will get together and tidy up and start to move forward again. The rock itself hasn't signalled another meeting. That doesn't include Bundaberg anymore, and most of the member councils were concentrating on getting their budgets finalised, and advice was to come out in this first quarter as to when we would get back together again. So that's as good as I've got. I'm sorry, councillor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor, quick question.
Yeah, just in terms of, it says here, around the opportunities to connect and collaborate. So I just wanted to better understand, what are can you give me some examples of what are the outcomes of the conversations that are had in this collaboration? Because I see it's funded, so I'm genuinely curious. I appreciate your hurry, Mr. Mayor, but I actually really want to understand this better, because water is a key priority for our region, and I can see the benefit in collaboration, and I understand also the Mayor's working with the Toowoomba Regional Council through their Water Alliance. So I guess I'm just trying to put all these pieces together. So I really appreciate an update around what are some of the outcomes from the opportunities to connect and collaborate that have happened previously on the ground that we could expect going forward, particularly as this is a funded project.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, why we're keen to continue this collaboration is it actually gives us access to the regional water, Queensland Water Regional Alliance program. If we're not part of this, we actually can't access any funding that could come up. So in respect of what we get out of it, we have a collaboration of design standards. So rather than every council going off and doing their own design standards, we have this is results of the former WebRock. We have a centralised design standards that it's consistent across the region. We have the likes of the sewer relining contract to try and get economies of scale. It's particularly for councils that haven't got a large relining budget, so they can actually get more buying power. It's those sort of things. We have skills sharing. We've done the collaboration with Skill Techs doing Cert 3s in network distribution waterworks. Those sort of things that you can't do, or you can do by yourself, but not as economically. So that's the sort of thing that's about.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I'm fully supportive, and I think it's wonderful to see that cross-industry collaboration opportunity to learn from other councils. So, yeah, thank you for the update.
Okay, thank you. Sure,
just one clarification through you, Mr. Mayor. This collaboration, it's actually fully optioned, so we're not obliged to do. We can opt in or out for any of the projects. So we're not committed to funding. So it's actually on an individual project basis whether we want to do it or we don't.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Just in wrapping up, before we go to the vote, I'd like to commend this to the committee. The technology that's involved in the delivery of water, particularly urban water and wastewater, is evolving rapidly, of course, and being able to network and maintain up-to-date knowledge, professional development in relation to the development of those technical standards and processes is very important for our staff. And primarily on that basis, I'd like to commend it, but also the ability to be able to tap into the QRAP funding as and when it comes along, very important as well. So in my view, at least, it's a very important initiative, and I'd certainly be recommending it to the committee. Okay, that being the case, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We've got some. Well, I know we want to get through the rest of it. We've got some people in the gallery waiting for us to get through to some items on the agenda. But nonetheless, I think it's probably we're due for a cup of tea. So I'll now move that we adjourn the meeting for morning tea and resume at 10. We have a quick cup of tea, 10:45 a.m. If we could, please. Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Seconder, those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll be back. Quick cup of tea. Be back at 10:45 a.m. Thank you all. Now move that we resume the meeting at 10:57 a.m. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Froloff, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Back to the order of business. 7.4 is the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, Phase 2, the program of the study. And we have the report as presented. Acting General Manager, I just wonder whether you wouldn't mind just giving us an overview prior to going into discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to provide an update in relation to the NDWF program. It wasn't my intention to go in detail through that paper because on previous presentations of the options analysis, we have brought forward the recommendations of that first phase of this project, which leads us on to the second phase. Now, the proposal made back to the funding body aligned with the recommendations of that options analysis, and it is quite comprehensive. It's a large piece of work, and it is, I suppose, integrated together because there's a large number of things across the region which relate to the benefits of this program. So it is really a refresh. We are at the point of being able to progress further on with it. And one important component is that how we progress with it, we've recommended that we re-engage with the authors of the project so far. That's with those gentlemen who authored the project. Now, the business that they work for is on a number of state panels, as well as the local government panel, and we would engage their continued services that way with the support of the committee. So with that, Mayor, I would probably pass it back to you if you have any queries or those of council.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. I think in light of the amount of information that's been provided here, we might just open this one up to points of view, discussions, questions first before we formalise the process. So just in terms of what Jed's provided there, councillors' questions. Councillor Duff, have you got your light on? Did you want to lead off? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on in the 25-year economic roadmap and item 4A, it's on page 275 of the report, and it talks about the economic roadmap focusing on water resources after the closure of Toorong Power Station and on-site water initiatives for Swickers, which I'm 100% supportive of. But my concerns are that this proposed roadmap misses a great opportunity to build a case study on the potential for our region of increasing the reliability of water in the Barambah scheme through investment in an inflow channel from West Barambah. And producers at the eastern end of the scheme, including Brett Heading, have shared with our council tremendous opportunities that exist in a winery valley and in crop production in the highly fertile Moffat region. So I think that there's an opportunity there that should be included. And also I think that we should be planning in the economic long-term 25-year plan for provision of residential water to the community of Highsville. Any future water planning should address this issue and include options as currently only half of the town have access to water, and this is non-potable. Surely it is unreasonable in this day and age to have residential communities living without water connections. So I'd like to recommend that those two projects be included in the 25-year economic roadmap.
Mr. GM, Acting GM, in response to that, is it possible to pick that up in the scope of the work for item 1 on the recommendation?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Duff. There are components of the study going forward which are urban in nature, and as part of our proposal of scope back to the state government, we did propose to include some urban components for which we're responsible for funding, and that was part of it. So to answer your question, certainly we can expand on any topic that we wish, but they're not directly covered by the NWIDF funding because of the approval that we have for the funding agreement. There is a necessity, however, for our work to be integrated. So we cannot consider any component really in isolation. So, for example, the proposal of the economic roadmap really covers all aspects. So it should look at all components, including in the original recommendation forward, going forward. Recommendation 4 was the South Burnett Integrated Water Initiative, and it was really summarised in that economic framework. So if there are components that we wish to include, we certainly are able to. They may not be funded under the program, but they can be carried concurrently. So that's the first, I suppose, response. In relation to the broader range of opportunities identified, that was actually part of the long list process. So those opportunities have not gone away. It's just we, in the options analysis, agreed that we had targeted the highest project priorities. So a number of opportunities exist which remain for us to investigate, but had not been the initial focus. So, for example, the Barker-Baramba system was certain water harvesting opportunities, and a number of other diversionary proposals were included in the long list and are still present. But we hadn't proposed in our response back to initially engage on those because they had not ranked as high in the ranking process, simply a matter of priority. If we wish to go back and research further some of those, we can do so in the future, but they weren't proposed just on a basis of priority initially. The Hivesville water supply is more aligned to our MIP process because it's in our urban water supply, and it is actually a topic that we will touch on in the next 2 reports before council. So while that is very worthy of consideration, we would do so under our normal urban water planning processes rather than under this national water initiative, very much focused on rural water and water supplies across the whole region. So we may split the answer there. We could go back to the long list of projects, and there were quite a lot. I think there was 20 or more, and there's a number of those warranting further investigation. But the only Barker-Baramba project that came up on our shortlist was the Barlil Weir project, which was quite advanced in its process, and thus we were trying to give it a stimulus along and bring it to a shovel-ready position so that it could get funding. Any of those big in-stream projects have a very long gestation period, so that's why we targeted the most likely for success in the short term. Thanks, Mr. Manager.
Yes, thank you, Acting General Manager. That being the case then, with the funding that we've got remaining here to be applied to do this stage 2 work now, which is an extension beyond the options analysis, on the basis that the Barker or the Baramba inflow to Pajocki Peterson Dam didn't make the shortlist under the options analysis, can we still, I suppose to make it clear, can we still, could council still resolve if they wanted to include that for further study, and could that funding be used, that remaining funding be used for that further study, do you know? Or would we need to go back to the department to get approval for such?
Mayor and Councillor Duff, I think that the question of eligibility of the study is clear. It clearly is met by the funding. It is a matter more for your perceived priorities and spreading your resources too thin. You had, I suppose, agreed with the position of the options report, which put the emphasis on that 3,000 megalitres of available allocation supporting the Balliol Weir project, and with it nearing a critical point, sought to push it forward. That largely is the only available allocation in the Barker-Baramba system in that, medium priority allocation, to my understanding from reading the report. Thus, it was the one that was prioritised. I see no reason that you couldn't further investigate one of the long list options, but I agree with the Mayor, you would probably go back to the department at an appropriate time and seek to expand your scope. I would suggest perhaps that you may initiate the process of studying your priorities and advancing your work with that project as being an optional addition depending on your focus and your progress towards your other objectives. There are a number of other objectives, including existing prioritised options that are listed there that came out of the report that perhaps you might like to see progress on first, and you could perhaps take it as a project to embark upon later in the year, depending on how you're progressing. I'm again conscious of your resources towards the projects that are already listing and not spreading too thin.
Acting GM, just on page 274 then, we've got $450,000 worth of proposed funding allocations across those 4 programs. The money we've received or receiving from the through the department's $579,000. So there's a $129,000 difference there. Could you just perhaps explain? Do we need to allocate the full $579,000, or can we do so?
At this stage, we haven't tested the market, Mayor. Those figures were based on our estimate about 12 months ago, I think, of how much might be left. So fortunately, the broader study left a greater balance, and it does give you some flexibility. What we don't know is when we test the market with your full scope, what that would cost. But it is, I think it's Council's decision as to whether you want to pick one or more projects out of your long list, being equitable in relationship to all the projects that are there, and whether you want to add them at this point, and then seek to increase your scope with the department. I think that's your decision.
Yes, thank you, Acting GM. Just wanting to give Council an understanding of what the committee, what the options are in relation to what Councillor Duff said. Are there options, aren't there options? But there could be, what you're saying, an option is if Council had appetite to do so, that extra $129,000 or some amount could be allocated to further study into the Baramba Creek inflow to Bajelki-Peterson Dam, as suggested by Councillor Duff. Clearly, the Heisel urban water is a matter for the MIP outside the scope of the NWIDF. Councillor Duff, I think that's probably been made clear today. But if that's something you wish to pursue, Councillor Duff, then it would probably have to be on the lines of allocating some or all of the remaining funding. That's a matter that would have to go to the group then to consider, if you wanted to do so. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jed. In all the conversations on the water security and all that sort of stuff that we've had and I've been a part of, excuse me, Nanango water supply. I believe that's a critical thing as well. I'll ask you, maybe you can tell me exactly where Nanango's security fits in, because in the short shutdowns that Tarong had, stopping the water flowing down through Meandew and all that sort of stuff, our bores over on the flats there dropped considerably in that short period of time. Now, I know that this has been on the agenda for a long time in Council with the concerns of water security for the township of Nanango. Yes, they have another weir down at Macaulay Weir, I think it is, or not Macaulay, but very poor water, really poor water. So can you just elaborate or explain to me where the Nanango urban supply water fits into this, or if it's even in there? And is it something that we need to consider moving forward, taking on the points in regards to what Councillor Duff said around the people of Hydesville living without water supply? Yes, Nanango's got it, but security in the future, where does that sit?
So if I could just interject there, thank you, Councillor Jones. It's a good question because obviously with over time, that's going to become an issue for us with as that meander, as that outflow into meander decreases, as no doubt will happen at some point in time in the future. So the MIP process, is that something that council can pick up and start to do the planning work in relation to what Councillor Jones is saying? Is that the pathway?
Absolutely, Mayor Otto, and thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor Jones. It is a little complicated, and I completely appreciate your questions because we have a raw water system and a regional focus under the NWIDF program. So that's all about raw water supplies and the region, quite clearly. So it has industrial, agricultural, and any other raw water demands on the system included in its focus. Thus, we have tacked on our urban needs there. To answer a very, very good question, but specifically in the MIP area, which I might add, we plan to provide a full report to Council in October of all the summarised outcomes. Now, I won't labour on it at this point, but there was a request for information from Councillor Shoemaker, which does give a bit of a summary in relationship to the extensive studies that were conducted there. Nanango is a wonderful question, and it was the focus of one of the studies later in the MIP process. Identified needs have been included in Anthony's network report, looking at needs and growth. But it was quite clear in the regionalisation study completed by SMEC that we had identified, as you correctly point out, Deputy Mayor, that our shallow aquifer system supporting Nanango is interrelated with groundwater, with surface water flows. So thus, flows in Meander Creek do certainly impact, and we have seen immediate impact on our standing water level when there's a cease to flow situation. That did lead recommendation from the regionalisation report that options needed to be considered for Nanango. Mayor, I don't know how much detail you wish us to go into today because it will be the focus of, I think, a series of workshops. But needless to say, it has been identified, a number of options have been considered, and there is a preferred option for supply, which Tim advises me is around year 12 or 14 in our current capital works program. So there is an option identified. It does consider those other surface water options such as Macaulay, and we have got a recommendation for your consideration and would present it in a full workshop because it's quite integrated and complicated. Happy to continue if you wish, Mayor.
I think so. I think today's really about the NWIDF. We might constrain that to the regional agricultural water, but some very good points raised in relation to Hydesville and Nanango moving forward. And clearly that would be, I would suggest, a process for future workshops. We've got a lot of work to do in relation to the MIP. We can pick that up in there. Councillors, you happy with that, if we do it that way? Just wanting to deal with Councillor Duff's matter first then. So Councillor Duff, perhaps just trying to guide you with a bit of a process here to put to your colleagues, you could look to include in the recommendation an additional item perhaps, which in light of what Acting General Manager has said, to fund a strategic assessment of options to enhance water reliability on the Baramba Barker scheme with a focus on Baramba inflow considerations. Is that something that you'd like to pursue? That's just helping you, giving you an option there
Thank you,
to address
Mr.
your
Mayor.
issue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with that, because I appreciate what you said about the barley aware, and it is low-hanging fruit, and there is $75,000 to do a rigorous evidence-based analysis, etc. So that, but I was just talking about this long-term 25-year regional economic plan. So as the Mayor said, is it an option to put that in there if it had the support of council to include that as one of the projects that we could look at as part of that?
I think Councillor,
Yeah.
Acting GM's already made that clear, that it's a matter for council. It was on the long list. If council chooses to include it as part of the recommendation up to the ordinary meeting, then council could choose to do that. Obviously, we would have to then allocate funding for that strategic assessment. There is $579,000 there. We'd probably need to rely on the advice of the officers to come back before the council meeting and before this is resolved and provide some indication as to how much funding would be required to satisfy the scope of the work that you want undertaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong in clarifying what you've said there, Acting GM, but that's the case as I understand it.
I think you've got that absolutely correct, Mayor. And we can come back with a concept of what might be required to advance that. I might also bring back the results précis of that particular diversion project from the original options analysis. I acknowledge it's like a 700-page document. So there is consideration of it at that concept level, and I will bring that information back for your information at the same time.
Yeah. Mind that this, of course, is only a recommendation to council, so council could resolve to change that if it was found to be cost prohibitive or not a priority. But anyway, we'll cover that shortly, Councillor Duff. So we'll come back to that when we get to the officer's recommendation before resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to raise this in any which case where we come along, but when we bring, if that's the will of council and we bring that back, the project management costs come out of this money as well. So when we engage to project management, those costs would be, so I was going to articulate so councils were clear. This wouldn't be done unnecessarily with full internal resources, and there would be there would be project management costs.
We need to be conscious of that when we make this decision at the ordinary meeting. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the conversation. Look, I'm fully supportive of the officer's recommendation as it stands. I'm not prepared to make decisions on the fly without the full details of the Barker-Baramba situation before us. I understand there has been some work on that project, and by all means, I think that work has to continue. But in this instance, I know from the options analysis undertaken that there has been rigorous review of every one of the projects put on the table. And I guess I'm fully supportive of progressing with this because I do see this as our opportunity to expedite some of those options. Yes, we're not getting all of them, and I guess my fear is if we pick your project, I think we could all potentially pick projects that we liked out of the study. And I know that in some instances in the conversations that I've had with people across the region that there were projects that perhaps people thought were more advanced that weren't. I definitely think we need to do that work around the Baramba-Barker area. However, I do believe that if we go forward, this path allows us to expedite the process. From the Barlil perspective, really, this project would enable us to identify, I guess, it would enable us to really work with Sunwater and convince them to prepare the business case for Barlil and progress that project. The project around Blackbutt, that is critical. We've got avocado farmers there with significant concerns over their water security into the future. And I think bringing them together is really important to progress that. I also see the work around the Gordon Brook Dam from irrigation, from urban to irrigation use, that is really going to inform our future decisions. And I know the MIP has given us a lot of information to consider, but to convert a dam to irrigation use isn't just going to, we can't just decide that and then tomorrow start charging people water. There's an enormous amount of work that has to happen in the background. I think the projects put forward are really key. I think we can get some outcomes. I don't think we should lose sight of all options on the long list. And my concern about just picking one off that long list without it before us and without council carefully considering all of the projects on that long list, I'd be concerned we're just cherry picking options. that project was considered in the study, and I do think there's definitely more work to be done. And I would hope through that economic roadmap and the 25-year look ahead, you know, there's going to be significant water when you start reading that report around 2037, future of Madoomba Dam, who can afford to pay for high priority water, who's got the high value crops to support the jobs and industry locally. I think it is critical that we start mapping out these things now so that we're at the right tables, so that we're using our levers for advocacy responsibly and really expediting whatever water infrastructure we can get in the region. So I'm fully supportive of the recommendation here, and I'd like to move such as it stands. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we have that moved. Do we have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Jones. Councillor Duff, are you willing to move an amendment?
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to test the mood of the meeting, because I believe that this is a 25-year plan. There's 300,000 in to do this plan, including the extra money that I think it was 75,000 that the Mayor has identified that's contingency. So I think that when we talk about the region, that Baramba and the BP Dam is an ongoing issue. Absolutely, the Barlow Weir is going to secure water for the producers who are currently using that water scheme. However, there is a whole host of people, as has been identified by Brett Heading when he talked about it, that could benefit through that in that Moffatdale area. It has huge potential, and I would hate to see that opportunity missed when you're talking about a regional focus. And so I would like to put an amendment that we include that in that.
Councillor Duff, I think just to help you out there, just to get to the
sorry, yeah.
let's get to the point here. Are you wanting to include another item in there? There's 6 items. Are you wanting to include another item that talks about a strategic assessment? That would make 7 items in total. A strategic assessment of options as to water reliability in Bajelki-Peterson Dam.
Yeah, the Baramba-Barker scheme through investment in an inflow channel from West Baramba.
Okay, so would you like to read that addition?
That the proposed roadmap includes a study on the potential for our region of increasing the reliability of water. Sorry, yeah, I've got it here. I'll finish reading it then. The study include the potential for our region of increasing the reliability of water in the Baramba-Barker scheme through investment in an inflow channel from West Baramba.
Just while Lynelle's finalising that, Councillor Duff, is that accurate as presented? Yeah.
Mr Mayor, yes, that
Okay,
is
so
accurate.
you're comfortable with that? All right, so we have proposed amendment to the motion, amended motion. Do we have a seconder for such, as presented on screen? Yeah. Just grammatically, there a study to include a case study. Should we just take a study out, include a case study? Or just a study on the potential? Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Duff, sorry?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. So do we have a seconder? Seconder? Okay. No, well, look, I'm comfortable seconding that in the absence of anyone else. So we'll get that out now. Well, let's go to speakers for or against. So, Councillor Duff, now's your opportunity to speak. First of all, in presenting your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I've mentioned before, this is a 25-year economic roadmap, so 25 years is a long time. I've been flagging the whole way that I think that that BP dam and the potential there and the fact that it's been running at 3% and 4% and 2% and the irrigators get cut off is a huge issue. So I know that there are other issues. I believe that 100% that there's the Gordon Brook Dam is an issue, the security of water for Kingaroy is an issue, but so too is an issue for that Mergen end. And this, we're talking about being regional and a regional focus. And when you get the likes of Brett Heading coming to council and talking about the potential there at Moffatdale and to expand that magnificent country there in that growth area, I just think it's an opportunity that we would lose if we don't progress this. And as I said, I'm talking about a regional focus here, and it's 25 years, and we've got 300,000 to do this roadmap, and also the potential of an additional amount that's in contingency. And I think that it's worth investigating, very much so for the future of our region as a whole. Thank you.
Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Duff, I don't disagree with you. BP Dam is a priority, and understanding that Barker project is certainly a priority, and it was identified in the options long list. I'm probably concerned and confused by your comments about a regional focus, because the study is based on a regional focus, and it has really cast a regional net over our water situation. I think it's really important to understand, and it says in the report, the development of a 25-year regional economic plan that will inform water infrastructure investment decisions for the South Burnett. This plan will be for the entire South Burnett. It's in the report before you. So I absolutely think the intent is not to lose any one of the projects identified in the options analysis, by all means. But I'm also listening to the advice given that we only have specific resources and we have to use them wisely in a way to really expedite infrastructure in our area. So I really want to understand, because from my position, I think the Baramba project, along with all projects, would be considered in that 25-year regional roadmap. We're not singling out one specific project. We've identified in the business case that Gordon Brook, the Blackbutt irrigators and the Barlow Weir are projects that we can really sink our teeth into and get some action on straight away. But it does not shift our focus on those longer term priorities. And I guess I'm hearing the conversation around the fact that we need to test the market for what it might actually cost to do these studies. We need to recognise that Baramba is an absolute option, but it takes, and it's been said in this chamber, a project of that calibre has a much larger gestation period. For me at the moment, I think the regional focus really will be underpinned by the 25-year regional economic plan, and I'm not comfortable with singling out one project, one study out of the options long list. There were a number of studies considered, And I think they all need to be considered on their merit under that regional economic plan that we're looking at. So the reason why I have concerns about singling out this one particular item, I think we're already doing that work through the 25-year regional economic plan, and I don't think we should be fast-tracking a project on what we think. I think we need to follow the science and the work that's been done around the cost-benefit analysis for each of these projects and assess them on their merit. But my question more to Jed is just, am I on the right track in thinking that all the options that were assessed in the business case will be considered in that 25-year economic roadmap? Or do we need to actually come back to council with a workshop so that we can consider all of them on their merit, not just cherry pick the ones that we would like to see happen sooner? That's my question.
Through you, Mayor Otto, and thanks for the question, Councillor Shoemaker. I believe you have got the correct understanding of the integrated oversight that an economic study has. It is not specifically project focus, it's more about potential. And what its focus is, it recognises that there are almost no available surface water supplies in the area of our study. Almost no additional potential allocations were identified. So it's largely about using the water that we already have. Now, one of the study outcomes, one of the options analysis recommendations related to water harvesting and water sharing rules, and that's a matter that we will advocate and provide advice on for Council's consideration in liaising with the state government and their water sharing rules and water harvesting opportunities per se. But Councillor Shoemaker is correct in that the economic study is focused on the highest value for the region and the appropriate locations to focus our efforts. So it's going to look at the potential of export earnings, of regional gross domestic product, of the maximising employment and regional growth out of the available water supplies, because we are sure now that there are no additional amounts of water to be identified. Available allocations in, for example, the Barker-Bramber system are very small, and I'm testing my memory, but it was in the order of 4,000 or 5,000 megalitres in total, of which Barlil-Weir was competently and efficiently able to capture about 3,000 of, if approved. Water harvesting is another question, and it's the point that Councillor Duff is raising. In the strategic business case, the preceding study, and the options analysis, the reliability of that water harvesting opportunity for the Barker-Bramber system was considered, and it was based on that reliability that it didn't receive a higher ranking in the order of projects. It's as simple as that. But to follow Councillor Shoemaker's lead, the study aims at identifying the locations within our region that available resources of water, as and if they become available, can best support our economic growth and employment and prosperity for our region. That's what the focus is. So it does not per se rule anything out if there is clear identified potential that we should pursue. In fact, it may do the opposite. It may identify specific projects in that long list which then deserve further focus because of that identified potential on an economic basis. I think it comes back to high value use of water and used in a way in which the cost of the infrastructure to provide it is optimal. So it is I suppose that growth aspect and the beneficial use of the available resources that's the focus. The projects that we'd identified, as Councillor Duff points out, are the low-hanging fruit that we believe we can get runs on the board with. Other aspects will take us on a journey over the 25-year progression.
Thank you. I'm keen to hear from other councillors on this. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I guess, Acting Manager Jed, you've almost answered my question, but One concern I would have, and there was some serious research done on that Baramba channel, dare I say, to get to the BP dam, that in the event of that, how much pressure or how much detriment could or would that possibly be on the Barlil Weir? Now, to construct a Barlil Weir and have users down that end, and to find in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time that their usage or their demand for water is being taken off them by a channel diverting water into BP dam for other reasons. And I'm all for growth. I am all for growth, and I understand where Councillor Duff is saying, but my concern is the Barlil Weir could become a little inefficient in that extent. Could that be a possibility?
Jed, would you mind if I just clarified that? If I can, Councillor Hatchell, I'm happy to answer that, and please compliment me. I've got extremely good knowledge of the inflow into BP Dam. I grew up in that area, and I was watching the dam being built, and my family have farmed that country. Look, I do know that the West Baramba inflow strategy via a channel down through the Clovelly olive plantation would in fact only complement Barlil Weir in my view, because what it would do is it's far to the west. So Barlil Weir is actually downstream of where the inflow would come from on the other side of the dam. So Council, what that would mean is that you'd actually have more water, because while we might have the 3,000 meg addition through the Weir, the 3,000 additional megs of yield through the Weir, the big issue still remains with BP Dam, and always has, that it just never has enough water in it. And if we can get greater inflow into BP Dam, that will not only help those on the Barlil Weir be able to get access to water, but it will help those who are upstream from the Weir and that they can actually use their allocations. At the moment, we have many producers who pay for this allocation, hundreds of megalitres a year. They rarely get to use it. Most of them haven't been able to use much of it since the 2013 floods, because the BP Dam hovers around 10%. It's now down to 8 or 9%. And Sunwater just say to them, sorry, you can't use the water. And that's the issue. It's not about supply, it's about reliability. And the only way we can fix reliability is to increase the inflow. So it's not about harvesting water via a pipeline. This is about a channel that provides an inflow from west of Baramba Station, which feeds directly to the eastern end of the BP Dam. So I hope that clarifies it. But technically, Jed, please feel free to correct me, but that's my understanding. Knowing the region and having talked to many farmers at Moffedale, that's what they tell me would be the benefit of doing so.
No, I understand that, Mr Mayor, and I was probably alluding to that it could certainly complement Barlil Weir down the time, but my question was, in the event, could it be detrimental to Barlil Weir? That was all, at some stage, or I'm happy to take that question on notice. And that would be part of a study. I know early in the piece, the study that was done on this water infrastructure, and it was on the long list. That was on the long list. I think it was about number 10, 9 or 10. But I think a great potential, but that was just my concern in relation to whether there could be a detriment to Barlil Weir somewhere at some stage.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor, I'll answer with my knowledge of the report prepared for us. So it's in the answer to your question, I believe, is in the options analysis report. The diversion project was initiated for focus as part of the first stage of that NWIDF study because of the input of stakeholders. So it was through engagement with irrigators right across our region that all of these long list projects were generated, plus with your own knowledge and input, of course, Council. But Mayor, the details of that diversion from my memory were all focused on water harvesting. Now, the likely licence conditions, and we certainly can't speak for the department, but the likely licence conditions which would be attached to a water harvesting licence would protect allocations within the system, Councillor Henson. So there would be a commence to flow licence condition which would protect not only Barlil water users, but all riparian users and all other licensed users of the system in its entirety. So the consideration by the department of the the prospects of a diversion between the West Baramba and the dam itself would take quite a bit of consideration by the department for that very reason that you raise. I would point out, as reminded by our manager, that the reliability of the Barleel weir itself is quite high. So not only would I think that licence conditions on a water harvesting licence protect all users, Barleel weir is actually a great project because of its high reliability. It can act as a regulating weir, as the Mayor's pointing out, with releases, but it has significant capability itself because of the flows in the system that Councillor Duff referred to. So it is a really good project, and that is why it's progressed to the point that it has. It's really at that demand assessment perspective. So hopefully that answers your question, and there's lots of information in that report which we could refer back to if you wished.
Thank you, Acting GM. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just a question to you then, Jed. You quoted that there's a possible 4,000 meg available to harvest out of the Baramba system. We're talking 3,000 meg that the addition to the Barleel weir. Now, if you put 3,000 meg into the Barleel weir with that project, that doesn't mean to say that we could get divert the water back into BP Dam and take another 4,000. Are we talking is that 3,000 out of Barleel weir come out of the proposed 4,000 that you said? So therefore it only allows 1,000 meg. If we go with the Barleel weir, that's 3,000 meg that we secure. So therefore we only have 1,000 meg available to harvest out of the Baramba system left over, with the possibility, you quoted that, I need to, just from, these are for my own benefit for you, the figures you quoted, or just said, a possible up to 4,000 meg harvest out of the Baramba system. Is that right, for a start? In total?
Mayor Otto and Deputy Mayor Jones, we are talking slightly different types of licence and allocation. So I think it's fair to say, without having the figure exactly in my head, that Barleel weir captures the majority of the available allocation which could be licensed in the Barker-Baramba system. That is our advice from the consultants. So it would consume those flows. Now, those flows are at all levels, Deputy Mayor. So inflows to the weir could come in quite a small flow or a large event. In whichever way, those users of that water would probably have a medium priority licence and they could access water captured and stored by Barleel weir. The diversion project that Councillor Duff referred to was, from my memory, in the options analysis, totally focused on water harvesting. So what that would do, it would only operate at the highest levels, whatever licence condition the department imposed, it would operate only at the highest level of flows. That means that in some years there would be no flow through a project like that. In other years, flood years, there might be significant available flows. So there would be a very high trigger, I imagine, in flows down the system before any diversion would be licensed to cross. And it's the reliability of that in frequent access. It's like any water harvesting process. You only get access to it in high flow events. That's the point. So they are complementary in a way. Both can exist, but certainly a water harvesting licence would not impact available allocations existing or potential in the system. The department would licence it to ensure that that was the case.
So through you, Mr Mayor, then, Jed, the only benefit, am I hearing correctly then, for the diversion channel would be at floods or excessive flows over the Barleel weir?
Mayor Otto and Deputy Mayor Jones, it would be measured at a flow past the offtake point, and indeed you could presume that at those times Barleel weir probably would be either full or filling, but it is certainly the way that water harvesting works. It could work as in an off-stream situation or in a diversion, as we're suggesting. So depending on the reliability of those flows really dictates the viability of the project, because there's significant costs, obviously, in building it, and you'd have to assess those, the likelihood and the recurrence of those higher flows, Deputy Mayor.
Just one more, Mr Mayor, through you to, so for this council and for the benefit of the region, the fastest way that we can get significant benefit through water and harvest or collecting water on that Baramble would be through the Barlil Weir project. I'm just asking your advice on that.
Mayor Otto and Councillor Jones, that particular project has a long history and a lot of studies supporting it. It is a highly reliable project and it's relatively cost effective, and I think that's why it's progressed prior to our study. Like, nothing that we've done in our study really has advanced it. We're now proposing, as Councillor Shoemaker put it, to assess the demand and I suppose the willingness of users to pay, and in that way to support Sunwater in identifying it as a good project to proceed with. I think it's just that it's progressed that far, and yes, indeed, we believe that we could strongly encourage Sunwater to proceed with a detailed business case. That's the last step in preparation for that project, by assessing demand, which is what we've proposed to do. It makes it a lot simpler for that project.
Other councillors? Councillor Fryloff, Councillor Potter, any comments?
I just want to make sure, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, I just want to make sure with Kathy's recommendation, which is at number 6 now, with regards to the Baramble Barkers scheme, I just need to make sure with myself that that will be covered under that 25-year regional economic plan. Yes or no? Yes.
Yeah, Mayor Otto and Councillor Potter, we will ensure that the scope of the study includes all the productive uses and is informed by the study that it's progressed to date. I understand that there are numerous, as we put it, low-hanging fruit that we wish to pursue, but the economic study really needs to look at what's the highest return to us and our economic sustainability and growth. So nothing is excluded in relationship to that. It's just that we have not invested further focus on fine-tuning the viability of that particular project because it wasn't ranked in our highest priorities.
Righto, I'm going to wrap this up. Councillor Duff, did you want to have right of reply before I wrap it up?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor, if that's okay. Just a little bit confused about acting GM, Jed. Just, you said before that if we wanted to include the Barker Baramble project, it would require to go back to the department, and because it's not the focus of the study. And yet, Councillor Potter just asked that question and you said that everything would be included, but in the original question, you actually said that we'd have to go back to the department because it wasn't included. So just a bit confused, sorry.
Apologies, Mayor and Councillor Duff. My reference initially was to add that particular project with the same emphasis as Barlow Weir, Gordon Brook and the other assessments there, in other words, to advance its detailed study. The economic analysis really looks at our whole region and how best to use that water. So we are not, we are sure that there's no additional water, we know that, and we have identified a number of projects to advance. But the economic roadmap will look right across our region and where best to apply that water. So it's an economic study, it's looking at employment, it's looking at the highest value uses of water across the region, which does not exclude the Moffat-Dale area or any other area of the region. So all of the work that's been done in the option analysis and that long list is there for consideration. It's just that we hadn't identified any further specific focus on any one of the long list. I hope that explains the difference.
Jed, if I can put it in Mark speak, being a non-technical buffin, the study's not project-based, it's broad-based. So you don't get an actual project in the study, it's broad and holistic, whereas the original question, as I took it, is project-based. So it's not sitting as its own individual project if, however this goes forward. The economic study is very broad and it covers sort of like almost planning, land use planning, except it's water use planning, but it's not project-based.
I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. I'm going to wrap this up. Okay, so we've got it there. Final comments. I've listened to what everyone said, and I have listened to what Brett Heading sat here and said and what he's articulated to me about the benefit for securing the water supply in BP Dam. BP Dam is a concerning facility. It runs far too low in terms of its percentage. We need to find ways to get inflow. At the moment, BP Dam only has one source of inflow, that's Barkers, and that water has to come from the Bunya Mountains down through Barkers. It goes through a number of blocks that have bores along that Barkers Creek between the base of the Bunyas and by the time it gets to the eastern end of Moffatdale. So it's got a long way to travel to get to BP Dam. The lack of falls in recent years in the Bunyas, heavy flow falls, the consumption from the bores along the stream are such that BP Dam just doesn't get enough water flowing into it. And that's what the Moffatdale farmers are saying. What they're saying is that if we can get Baramba Creek flowing into BP Dam, we've got two sources of water flowing in, we can provide much more certainty, much more reliability that we can actually use our allocations. At the moment, these people pay for these allocations and can't use them. And it's a major deterrent to what is highly valuable cropping land. It's very fertile. They've got the opportunity to grow wineries out there, to expand the wineries, to expand a whole range of production opportunities out there. But at the moment, they just can't use their allocations. I understand that Barley will help. My understanding, though, is it will primarily help those who are at the other side of the weir, as against providing benefit for those who are on the eastern end, on the downflow end. The inflow end of the weir as against the outflow. That's my understanding. It's now a matter, let's put this to the vote. My final words are finished. Okay, those in favour? Okay, we've got Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter, Councillor Froloff, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Otto. Those against? Okay, Councillor Jones and Councillor Henson against. Okay, so the amendment has been carried, 5 votes to 2. Mr. CEO, it now becomes a substantive resolution. So we vote on it again. So we've now got the substantive resolution. Same mover and seconder as it is. Okay. Anyone wish to speak? Can they speak on this one? I always get confused. Speakers for or against before we go to the vote? Substantive resolution. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason why I've decided to support your amendment, Councillor Duff, because I think it already aligns with exactly what we're trying to achieve. I don't support identifying it as a individual project at this point in time, because there just isn't the cost-benefit analysis or the information and the data through the whole process to support that. But I do think it should be considered just like every other project. I recognise it's a priority. However, at this point in time, it's not advanced enough. And I do hope through that 25-year economic roadmap, a lot of the projects identified in the options analysis will become clearer for our region and really will direct our investment decisions. So that's why I've decided to agree with your amendment here today. However, I don't think that project should be selected as the only one, because there are many projects in that analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, I just support Councillor Shoemaker there. Acting General Manager has indicated that broad economic study will give us the opportunity to pick up other economic opportunities that may be identified through that study, in addition to this and anything else. Look forward to that. Okay, anyone else? Speakers for or against? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Okay, we've got the 5 again. Linnell, you got those? Those against? Okay, we've got Councillor Jones and Councillor Henson against. Right, thank you all. That was a very good conversation, good debate. We'll wrap that one up. Let's move on now then to 7.5, application to supply water outside the declared water area at 277. Acting GM, our water fellows, would you like to give us an introduction? Thanks for being patient and waiting. It's now your turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Otto. By way of introduction, we've got two reports for your consideration before you today, and they're both related to declared water area. So I might just give a very brief introduction to that. Declared water areas are identified as a legislative requirement on a water service provider, which are legislated under the Water Supply and Reliability Act. It is contingent upon any water service provider to provide a certain level of performance and allow connection of all properties within a declared water area. Thus, the identification of a declared water area really relates to our ability to physically connect. There are very few exemptions under the Act in terms of meeting necessary performance, but there are an odd one related to pressure and flow at individual properties. But importantly, it is contingent upon us to allow connection to all of those properties. So thus, we are always quite judicious in our advice to council in relationship to the capacity of our systems. And we do have some instances where there are connected properties outside of a declared water area, which are historic decisions of council, which of course we're obliged to support. So we have initially brought the first report based on a request for extension of our Proston Rural Scheme. Now, this is not the only request for extension that we receive through a year. It's normal process in council to collect any requests that we have through the year where a ratepayer, a resident, wishes to connect to our schemes which fall outside of our declared areas, and we bring them before you annually, which again is an obligation under the Act. So we collect that on an annual basis and we assess our ability to meet that requested extension. We also have a number of, I suppose, standing considerations that we would apply where someone is right on the boundary of an existing declared water area, because from an equity perspective, if there's an ability of a scheme to supply someone, they're right on the boundary, and there's not any large cost associated with it, i.e. you're on the other side of a street, you happen not to be in the declared area, but there's not an impact significantly on the scheme, well then we would consider an inclusion and recommend that to you. So that's the background, Mayor. We certainly have a history in the past of numerous connections being made, decisions being made by council for extension. They have impacted our ability of our schemes to meet the necessary standards, and you're well aware through our recent capital works program considerations that we've got large obligations which you've prioritised where we're upgrading the capacity of other schemes. So it applies equally to all schemes, which is the point of our second paper before you. The first report, though, Mr Mayor, relates specifically to Proston scheme, and it does touch on the potential to extend to Hivesville as well. I have with me the learned and good-looking gentleman to my left who are able to answer in detail any questions that you may have. I know that Tim does have a summarising PowerPoint. We have a detailed report before you, and my learned colleague's able to answer any question. So I would leave it to you, Mayor and councillors, as to how much detail you would like, or whether you wish to just go straight to questions on the reports. Thank you.
I'll take guidance of the meeting. Happy to go straight to questions at this stage. How long is the report, gents? Or do you want, how long is the report, Tim? Time frame? How much time do you need, Tim?
Do you want to go line by line, Mr Mayor? Anthony? Yeah, Anthony's the author of the Morris report.
Yep.
He's the water analysis.
Can you give us a 10-minute summary, Anthony, of the report?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, happy with that? Is committee happy with that? Take that? Yep, okay. Over to you, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you. So our report's been based on hydraulic modelling. These detailed modelling results have been developed based on broad range of criteria, so including all of the hydraulic parameters. They've all been confirmed, and that's been calibrated and checked so that the model and the reality are close to each other. So what we did was we checked existing scenarios and also future growth scenarios. There are a range of different ones. So we checked existing and then the existing infrastructure. There's two different aspects to it. So there's the demand and then there's the infrastructure that's under the ground. So we checked existing infrastructure, existing demand, and then future demand growth and what sort of infrastructure would need to be incorporated to accommodate that growth. So looking at that, there was a whole range of options that we looked at. What we found from the modelling was that it will be necessary to provide renewals to the existing infrastructure that's in the ground. It's got a useful life, and as it comes to the end of its useful life, that infrastructure needs to be renewed, and that has a cost. When infrastructure reaches the end of its useful life, there's an opportunity to I guess, review the planning and identify if an upgrade is required, or do you replace like for like, or would it be beneficial to increase the size? And that's what we've tried to identify in this report. Of course, increasing the size comes with increased cost. And that's something that has been identified there. Looking at the cost of renewals and then the extra over cost for providing those upgrades, I guess we just need to find a balance between providing a service to the community that's within the realistic bounds of the cost provision. On one hand, it's great to be able to say, yes, I'd love to provide water to every single person in the whole region. We do have the declared service areas for a reason, to condense the infrastructure, condense those service areas so that we can minimise the infrastructure, get the most amount of bang for the buck. Now, if we start to extend outside of those areas, there reaches a certain point where the, I guess, the cost per unit benefit, if you like, if I can talk really generally, starts to become high. And that's what we need to, I guess, be aware of when we're considering connections outside of the declared service area. That gives a brief overview of the report. There was some costings that we did based on those couple of scenarios. So existing case, future growth, and then also talking about like-for-like replacements versus upgrades. And those the numbers have been spelt out there.
Thank you very much, Anthony. You actually come in well under time, so thank you. It leaves us plenty of time for questions. We might go around the table. Any questions for the team? Councillor Henshin, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask the question, in that designated area, how many properties are not connected? Do we know that figure? Happy to probably take that on notice if that's not available. It'll be in there.
Yeah, so we did determine the number of connections and stuff that are unconnected in there. The report's actually converted that to what we call ET rating, so basically an equivalent residential block. So each one's got difference in there. Unfortunately, those figures aren't in that report because the way we calculate stuff is all equivalent tenements, but we can determine that if you want. I'll just have to dig back through the spreadsheets to get the exact number if you like.
Yeah, thanks, gents. We'll keep going. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you. I have a lot of questions, and my apologies. Very extensive report. I think I've learned a lot about the terminology through reading through this report. Thank you very much. And I can see how much work has gone into the modelling and the forecasting. I guess, my first question just relates to, so on page 312, at the end of the independent study, it states, based on the modelling, the estimate cost to deliver required capital works ranges between approximately 8.8 million and 12.2 million, depending on future growth and development. The cost of renewal of same infrastructure was estimated to be between 5.9 million and 7.3 million, and the cost difference to upgrade as opposed to renew was estimated to be between 3 and 5 million. I guess there's a lot of information in this report, and I understand there's been a lot of different scenarios, and I've tried to stick with you, engineers. It's been quite complex, and I just wanted to understand that further. So if we make this decision, are we making the decision to spend, I guess, which scenario, if we were to support this, which scenario would we be supporting? And at what cost?
Yeah, so the way we displayed the cost in that, so there's total cost essentially in Morris's report at the end, which doesn't detail it out to expanding the zone or certain areas, whereas the other report splits it out, and we split the report up as basically total costs. So those figures you were talking about there are total costs to do everything. However, we've also put the renewal costs and then the upgrade costs to support them. So the first scenario basically put in there, which I believe is, if we went renewals only, is about $6 million, $5.9 million to do the renewals, with an additional $3 million obviously to upgrade to get a total of $8.8 million. That's just to actually upgrade the infrastructures to support all the future potential connections within the declared service area and make sure we can provide the levels of service that we desire to achieve there. So that's just not adding, expanding the zones, not incorporating Heisel as the rest of the township into that area. It's just make sure we've got the infrastructure online to support the existing customers, and any potential future customers have the right to connect within those zones. So that could simply be a case of the blocks are owned by one person. He's got a connection on one block, runs cattle across an example, but then sells that other block off, where that zone or the new owner could potentially request to connect in future. So that's where those ultimate connection costs comes from.
These are on page 311, councillor, just the page before.
Yes. So I'm just rounding the figures up without getting tongue-tied on the exact dollar values. So bear with me if I just round it up to the nearest million.
Yes, Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you could just explain this, because I've read the detail and I've got all the scenarios here, and I guess I really want to understand this better. So if you can break this down for us, step us through existing, ultimate with extra demand, and ultimate with extra demands in Hivesville. What, if we were to make this decision, what we're actually committing council to is what I'm trying to understand.
Just while Steve is finding that specific detail, this scheme, like all council schemes, has some level of performance deficiency, which is the point I think you're seeking, Councillor Shoemaker. So we'll get specifically the details. So that table that you're talking about identifies for the existing scheme to meet any performance deficit, as you've seen us prioritise in other parts of our capital works program for other schemes. There are identified figures there for renewing like for like, for additional upgrading to meet existing capacity. So that's in that line that you're referring to of table 6, councillor. So renewals only 5.9, additional cost to meet the current performance deficit, an additional 2.9, making 8.8. I will pass back to my learned colleagues because once I stop reading, I'm out of detail.
Wrong one. With each of the scenarios, we basically went through a whole heap of models to identify which areas are impacted in current situations and then under the ultimate situations. So those figures in this first case, in terms of the existing cost figures, on page 292, there's a plan there with a lot of big red dots. Each one of those red dots basically says where you've got very low pressure potentially at customer offtakes. So we have a level of service where, in particularly the Proston scheme, that scheme's been developed to try and maintain a pressure head, if you like to call it, of 15 metres at the connection point. That's making sure our network can support that, obviously to deliver the services required there. And that's also at a average day demand flow that we've determined through meter records. So then the figure on the following page on 293 outlines all the areas, basically the mains that would have to be upgraded in order to maintain that lower level of pressure and flow to those customers. So that initial cost then to come back to that 5.9 million for renewal components, that's just basically saying if we just renewed all those red lines with like for like without maintaining or improving that system performance, it's going to cost you 5.9 million. That's just purely renewals. The extra $2.9 million is basically to upgrade those pipes that have to be replaced to make sure we can actually meet the levels of service we want for those customers. So the total cost then is the 8, it was just the sum of those two. So there's about $2.92 million worth of upgrades, basically increasing pipe sizes to actually make sure we're obtaining the right levels of pressure and flow to those offtakes. Now we are aware over the years of a number of issues with low pressures and flows at various bits and pieces, and they're all in the old historic reports, network reports in details where it's all handed over with the original system saying that these areas need to have these sort of improvements going forward. Then it's just a monetary decision on when we do those upgrades. So obviously we don't want to run in specifically here and run around and do all those upgrades straight away. These upgrades though, as I was saying, are assuming that everyone that can connect within the network is able to connect. Within the DSA is able to connect at some point in the future.
Thanks, Steve. I'm just going to interject here if I can, and thank you very much. That's very, that's excellent. So what we're faced with here now, committee, is to whether or not we recommend to council the recommendation as presented, or whether council is prepared to consider an application to extend the declared water supply area. So what we're talking about is the conversation thus far has been a lot around, certainly is relevant, but has a lot around the renewal and or upgrade to the entire Proston rural network. But the matter at hand right now is, do we, as Councillor Shoemaker alluded to, do we actually, where do we want to go with this matter of extending the network? So probably just want to bring the conversation to that. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought I would use this opportunity to put forward, because I agree this is about some applications to extend the scheme. So I would like to put forward, and based on what Acting General Manager Jed said there before about exceptions and neighbours, and if it's not a major impact, I'd like to put forward an alternative to the officer's recommendation by proposing the following motion. That the committee recommend to council that council submits an application under the Water Supply Act, in brackets Safety and Reliability Act 2008, to extend the declared water supply area on the Proston Rural Water Scheme to include lots 8 and 10 on registered plan B09 in the parish of McEwen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Okay. So we have that in front of us. Do we have a seconder for such? Okay. All right. I think before we probably, can I give leave for Councillor Duff to perhaps explain a little bit more so we know what we're seconding, Mr. CEO? Councillor Duff, could you perhaps explain your motion and then we'll seek a seconder? Thank you.
Okay, so there are only 2 property holders seeking inclusion in the supply area. I've spent time on Monday with Mr. Evans driving around the other properties in the area, and they either have historical connections or are mostly grazing and cultivation blocks with their own water infrastructure and without any residents. These 2 property holders are only wanting the water for basic domestic and garden use, and Mr. and Mrs. Evans are already using the water. So adding their property will not place any further demand on the allocation or infrastructure. They are also prepared to negotiate on the installation costs of the pipeline. So as Acting General Manager Jed said there before, if you're a neighbouring block or it's an exception, I think that this is an exception, and I think that into the future that we can handle, when you talk about precedences, handle them on a case-by-case basis. And if you look at this whole Croston Rural Water Scheme, there are places where there's been brand new pipes put in, and other places where the connectivity is not so great. So I just think to have a blanket approach is wrong, that we have opportunities here to do some good with the scheme by expanding just in little bits and bobs where, as a General Manager Jed has suggested, and I think this is an exception, and that into the future we can handle any requests on a case-by-case basis. So that's the explanation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Okay, for the purposes of enabling debate on this matter, I'm happy to second it. So, Lynelle, I'll second the motion on that basis. And now I open up. Councillor Duff, did you want to add any further to that? Were you happy to go to anything to add? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to get the views of the other councillors.
Okay, so we'll move on. Other councillors, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious as to the owners of the property on, where is it, lots 8 and 10. Are they all the same people or are they different people?
Councillor Duff, can you clarify that?
Two neighbours, there's 2 different people, 2 different blocks, yeah.
Okay, keen to hear from other councillors. I'd like to go around the room. Councillor Henson, any comments? Councillor Henson, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, there would have been some lots some time ago applied under drought conditions to probably have water connected. And am I correct in saying there was a 12-month period to access that? And I'd just like probably further clarification of lots 8 and 10 as to perhaps the size and the potential usage, or a little bit more information on that, if that's possible.
Councillor Henson, yeah, look, lots 8 and 10 are 120 acres each, is my understanding, and they are primarily using the water for domestic use. I've actually been out there some time ago. At this stage, lot 10's using it for domestic use, I think, run the household, the toilets and the garden. And when the dam goes dry, I think they've got some of the grandchildren stock there that's used to provide water to the stock when the dam runs dry. Lot 8, I think, is looking to build residence there and probably wanting water to supplement the tank water to that residence. That's my understanding. Don't quote me on that, but I think they're about 120 acres each, and I think it's primarily, my understanding, is used for around the house and the garden, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are they the same? May I ask? Are they the same family?
Some two different families, as far as I'm aware.
Are we able to share the names of the landholders, Mr. CEO, in a public meeting? We haven't got consent of the second landholder. We don't have consent to share the names. No. But 2, Councillor Duff, there's 2 individual blocks there. two separate landholders that are right on the edge of the boundary. My understanding is that they're about 120 acres each, but I stand corrected, but I believe that's the size of the blocks. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just on a totally mechanical, given that, and again, not preempting the outcome, but given that this is different to the office's recommendation, we're getting better at putting, because there needs to be under the Act of reasons why council would. So I've just picked several reasons which I thought I heard out of the councillor's presentation. So they would then form part, they're not part of the resolution, but they would just satisfy the requirements of the Act.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO. We can update them later. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you're right. That's part of the legislation, so important to include that. Let's go around the table. Councillor Froloff, Councillor Schumacher, Councillor Jones. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Froloff, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. Yeah, I do, as I stated in March portfolio when this first came up, I do feel for the two property owners. But again, my issue is, does it set precedence for all the other properties that are around the declared water use? That is of concern to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Froloff. Anyone else? Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly going over the report, it's probably for me, it's demonstrated that the decision we're making, it's not isolated. It's actually quite complex in terms of how declared water areas are supposed to function. And I can see throughout time there's been significant change across the region, which has meant exceptions on some cases have been made. I want to understand before moving with this resolution. I have not read the Water Supply Act, so I'm being very honest here, and I just want to understand, because it is in contradiction to what the advice council's been given, can council actually make this decision under this Act? So that's my question. What are the provisions that actually enable us to make an exception? Because this hasn't been discussed in the chamber before, and I'm not comfortable in making a decision either which way at this point in time until I really understand my actual, I guess, obligations and ability to make this decision today.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So I'll just come to the office shortly, but my understanding is that Council needs, having read at least preliminary parts of the Act, that Council needs to submit an application to the department, Tim, or can we simply approve? So do we need to actually resolve to submit an application, or can we actually approve the extension? That's the first element to it, I think.
Mayor Otto, I was going to raise that the ability to declare a service area by a water service provider is delegated to the service provider, in this case council, by that legislation. So it is a decision for you to make. It comes with it obligations, however, to meet certain standards of both performance and also our obligation to connect all properties separately within that declared service area.
I think that's a really good answer. I think that's really what Councillor Schumacher was getting to there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Schumacher, what are the obligations upon us when making that decision under that delegation?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I want to understand those obligations because in reading this report and the calculations and the modelling that's been done, it's my understanding, and I'm summarising, so please fill in the gaps. Our infrastructure is ageing and it will at some point in time meet its end of life. There's already inefficiency in the network of up to 30%, I think I read in the report, around Proston. There's also a number of other properties, historical properties that could be tied up in this decision. And I guess this is, council could be in a position at the moment, we know our, how much water, and regardless of this application, I'm just talking in general here because I'm really trying to understand the process and as to how we move forward. I read in here that we would need to purchase more medium priority allocation, which would be converted back to high priority allocation. So the sums here in the report were, provided allocation is available for purchase, the expected cost of this would be at least $225,000 based on the allocation, or based on the previous allocation purchases, as it will be difficult to purchase high priority water. 125 megalitres of medium priority allocation may be purchased and converted back to 50 megalitres of high priority allocation. So I guess, I mean this, I've definitely tried very hard to understand your report before me, but I'm trying to understand, if I make this decision, what am I actually committing this council and the next council and the next council after that to here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the overall commitment is largely depending on, in this report, there's several tables, and the last one is the ultimate one. The ultimate one engages the extensions to the Bluff. It involves the extension to Hyattsville. So we've got to actually work backwards from there. If that's the total goal of council in the future, that dictates the upgrades of today. Because if you chose not to do the extensions to the network reticulation in Hyattsville, then the Bluff extensions are significantly lower, because the very reason for that is if you choose to do Hyattsville, your size upsizing on the network through the Bluff has to increase. So that's why there is so many technical tables there, because it's trying to cover all forward planning basis. So it's really up to council as to what is your long-term vision, because what you decide today or in the future, if you want to do Hyattsville, then we've got to do the last table, the ultimate table, basically. It's really up to council to decide which way you want to go.
Okay.
So just a supplementary question. Sorry, because I think we're confusing all of the issues here. But in this instance, in line with Councillor Duff's recommendation under the Water Supply Act, I'm hearing you in terms of that council can make the decision to make an exemption for this particular landholder in this case because of the historical nature of their connection and alike. And we all understand from the many discussions that we've had that that's not even clear. So we can make this decision. So what are our obligations as councillors if we make this decision? Is everything else that's in this report around the cost estimates, the extra allocation, all of these things, are we committing to council to that, or are we under the Act making an exemption based on these historical reasons, but also acknowledging that into the future, if we were to make any further decisions of this nature, we would have to be prepared to basically renew the network, because we cannot offer the performance across the network that we need for every water user in the area, in the declared service area. Am I clear? Yeah,
through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, councillor, you're absolutely correct. You as council can make the decision. As it stands at the moment, we could do several connections outside of the declared area. You set the boundaries. It's what council is comfortable with. But what you have to remember is you're exactly right. In the future, if all the inside area of the declared area is infilled with connections, then ultimately we have a problem. Currently, we don't. No. We can currently supply persons out or connections outside of the DSA, but the ultimate solution is if all that is infilled. No, we can't. and that's where your upgrades trigger.
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to interject because I want to move this along. Other councillors haven't had a chance to speak yet. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Take all points raised and the comments you made around the grandson and all that sort of stuff. It's a difficult thing. I go through the same situation with my own kids. I try and help them and give them a little bit of a leg up in life, as we probably all do. And it's a sad situation when it's in dry weather and all that sort of stuff. We have a decision, and don't call me callous for it, but we sell them. And I understand, I take Councillor Shoemaker's comments in regards to this report. It's very technical, it's very full on. But what I will say is that we have a gentleman sitting over there in a yellow shirt, Steve Carroll, that is a highly respected and very intelligent man, and he's been a part of this. And I'm going to back the staff on this. I believe that the information that I have in front of me, I'm happy to support the original recommendation. I won't be supporting the amended recommendation, simply because I believe that this report is very significant, very comprehensive, to the point, and I do take all other options. I know it's a simple fix, but again, Councillor Shoemaker highlighted some of the questions in regards to commitments moving forward. So, yeah, I would just like to say that I'll be supporting the initial recommendation and not the amended one, on the basis that this is a very solid report, and I recognise the significance of the intelligence behind all this sort of stuff, and particularly the people to put it together.
Okay, I'm going to move to wrap this up. Councillor Duff, you have a right of reply, and then I'll look to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm really keen to see this supported. I think, as has been stated over there by Manager Tim, that this is not going, that we can deal with this, no problem at all. We could take quite a significant number of extensions. Also, this whole, as you can see by the report, it's very complex. There's been a lot of upgrades in the lines over the years. In some places, there's a better flow than others. And in this particular instance, as has been said, that where there is a neighbouring block and it's not going to impact on the line, why wouldn't you do it? So in the area that I said that I drove around with Mr Evans, adding this property will not place any further demand on the allocation because they're already using the water. The other properties around there don't have residences apart from one, and they've got they're mostly graze and cultivation blocks. So I think that as we move forward, that we need to look at all of these on a case-by-case basis and not just make a blanket, oh, we can't do it because into the future all of these other people might take up connections. I just think that we're living in the now. We've got people absolutely wanting to just use this for their residential, just to water their garden. It's not like they're going to be hundreds of cattle or anything like that. It's just a garden, and you can also for their residents, and you can also put restricted flows on. And I know a lot of the blocks have got restricted flows just so that you can just use it for garden purposes only or for domestic purposes. So I just think that this is an opportunity to do something good for these people. They've been actually had an approval a few years ago, and that lapsed. So we've already agreed to it. This is just a technicality. This is an opportunity to do, as I said, something good for two residences in our community, and I just think that it's absolutely a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you support these people? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, concluding comments before we go to the vote. Yeah, look, this proposal adds 2 blocks, two titles to the declared service supply area. It won't mean that anyone that's in the existing supply area will have any more rights than they did not previously have. So those rights won't increase. They could now, even if we don't approve this, they could still seek to connect. So this would only add an extra 2 blocks on that basis, I've listened to what everyone said. I think to support these two residents, to add those extra 2 blocks, in my view, can be taken without placing any demand, any significant demand on the system. So I'll be supporting the motion as it stands. Of course, I did second it as well for that reason. Okay, I'm now going to go to the vote.
Could I interject just on a matter of process? In the reference to the to referring the application, this is a decision of council. So just on a matter of process.
Very good point. Thanks, Jed.
You are making a recommendation to council from the committee. So just like any of the other 30 applications we've had this year, it is up to you to decide on.
Okay. So could we say that council approves?
To extent, yes, correct.
Approves in accordance with? Yep. Approves in accordance with, to extend. Councillor Duff, thank you, Jed. That's very important to clarify that under the delegation. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Duff?
Yes, thank you, Mr
Okay,
Mayor.
well, I'm fine with it as a seconder. We'll go to the vote now. In favour? In favour? We're at the vote, sorry. In favour? Okay. Councillor Duff, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Otto. Against? Councillor Jones, Councillor Potter, Councillor Henson and Councillor Froeloff. Okay, the resolution, the motion has been defeated, 4 votes to 3. And as such, we'll now go back to the original recommendation, the officer's recommendation, which we have in front of us. And the recommendation is as presented. We'll get to that shortly. You can see that there at 7.5, which basically states that council's unable to provide a water connection. So do we have a mover for that? Councillor Froeloff, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Okay, speakers for or against? Before we go to the vote. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to speak against this because I think that we need to have the flexibility of being able to make decisions on a case-by-case basis. I don't want to lock this whole scheme in to just saying no to everybody. So I'm absolutely against this. Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to confirm, so with this recommendation, we are deciding not to increase the declared water supply area. Is that correct? Yes? So with this recommendation, we're deciding not to increase the declared water supply area for the Proston Rural Scheme, to keep it as it is.
For this particular request for application.
For this particular request for application.
Correct.
Okay. So, and this particular request for application related to 2 properties, is that correct? Yes? And, yes, okay. All right, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. Too much, I've been lost in your report a little bit. Thank you.
Other councillors? Speakers for or against? No, we'll go to the vote. In favour? Okay, so we've got Councillor Jones, Councillor Henson, Councillor Froeloff in favour. Against? Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Otto. The motion has been defeated. No, defeated. 4 votes to 3. It's been defeated. 4 votes to 3. Committee, that being the case now, does anyone have an alternative motion to put forward on this matter? Okay. I would put forward an alternative motion that we extend to include lot 10 because Mr. and Mrs. Evans are already using the water. They have been for some time, for decades. It's not going to add any more additional water drain on the system. They've already got a pipeline into their house. And at the moment, the block that they're getting the water from is going under sale because Mr. Evans' brother passed away. That means that they can't have water for their septic system. They haven't got water for their garden because they've obviously got tanks, but in their part of the world, like many others, they just don't get the rainfall. And that they, the grandkids have got a few cattle there and they'd like to leave the cattle there so the kids can learn the cattle industry. And it's not going to place any real burden just to give that one extension. That would be my argument. So on that basis, I'd like to propose exactly the same, but simply with lot 10 only, which I do believe is the property of Mr. and Mrs. Evans, as I understand it. Yes, I do believe that is. So look, I'll move that. Is anyone prepared to second that? It's a proposal. Yep, okay. Councillor Henshin, thank you. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker? Councillor Henshin? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Henshin, you go first then. Well, we'll go anti-clockwise. Thanks, Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate, and to our gallery, we get put in positions sometimes when we get given facts and figures or numbers, and previously mentioned it, and we have had communication with some of these people over a period of time, and I support you, Mr. Mayor, with this application for Mr. and Mrs. Evans because, there's some previous history there where connection was within the family reigns some time ago. So I'm happy to support that motion, Mr. Mayor, because I've had conversation with Mr. and Mrs. Evans over time, and I can certainly understand and appreciate the position they're in, because when I was there last time it was pretty ordinary circumstances with dry weather. So I'm happy to support that motion, Mr. Mayor. But I would also like to, if possible, in future, when we're given lot numbers and RPs, can I bring it just to everyone's attention? We have no idea who we're talking about or where this might necessarily be. And it's happened before in other things that we have to vote on. And sometimes that can be hard to make a decision on. So I'd just like to bring that to the table in the chambers that sometimes a little bit more information is, and I can understand privacy and confidentiality, but sometimes I think a little bit more information is sometimes handy. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, with regards to that, unless we have, and this is just a sheer fact, unless we have the consent of the property owners clearly consenting that their name be dropped in public, it's not going to happen. So you're going to get lots and plans and nothing that's identified, and nothing that can identify the property owner or the person in question unless we have their clear consent. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is now.
I can fully understand that, Mr. CEO, and I think perhaps in time that may be looked at in the confidentiality section. Is that somewhere down the track?
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've just got a couple of questions just purely around logistics, because I understand the connection at this property in the conversations that we've had is a historic connection and it's an extension of a council connection at a property. So there's only one water access charge actually charged for the two properties' use of the water. So if that property is sold and we maintain this connection, there will need to be new infrastructure to support that, I imagine. So I just want to understand, you mentioned, or Councillor Duff had mentioned, opportunity to negotiate, and I recognise an application had been approved previously prior to the fuller understanding of the declared service area. So I can see how this issue has become clouded. I want to understand, if we approve this application, that council's not paying, I want it clear that council's not paying for this connection, that the cost of this connection will be borne by the ratepayer or the resident in general, because their current connection is actually an illegal connection. So I want that confirmed. If this goes ahead, if council supports this, the resident is responsible for the connection and will have to pay for such a connection. That is my understanding, because the existing connection is an illegal connection in our network.
So we'll come to that shortly. Yes, that's that question. So come to you, Acting General Manager. Should council approve, should this go through to the ordinary meeting and be approved, what will be the cost and how will that be borne? I do understand that that the landholders have indicated that they would be comfortable with negotiating installation costs, and I just don't know about the meters. At the moment, they don't have a meter, so we would collect an access fee that we don't get at the moment because we've got one meter running servicing two properties. So you're right. So we would have an extra meter to install with an extra. We'd get the extra access fee, but there'd be extra cost of the installation of the additional meter.
And is it?
Can we get some guidance on that?
So simple as to connect an extra meter, because at the moment this is just running from the adjacent property, so we would have to run from our infrastructure to this property. So can it be done? And I just want to ensure council's ratepayers, this won't come at a cost to our other water access users in the region who are already paying for their water connections.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would say we can definitely connect it to our existing pipeline. They're not a great size service line, but we can do it. It would be a service connection cost as per our fees and charges. We'll have to have a look at it. If it's a long service crossing, we'll have to give a quote. We'll install a standard meter, which is also charged, and then you have the ongoing access fees.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you, Tim. Okay, other councillors? Councillor Potter? No, you're right. Anyone else? Okay, anyone else? Before we go to the vote on this? Okay, we'll go to the vote then. Those in favour? Okay. Against? Okay, Councillor Jones against. Right, well, the motion's been carried. It's now been resolved. So we'll now move on, thank you, committee, to item 7.6, which is the Declared Water Supply and Sewerage Service Area Review 2021 at 313. It's the final item. Acting GM, did you want to give us a quick overview on this one before we wrap it up? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Otto. The process, as I introduced at the beginning of the two reports, is for council to consider its declared water area under the delegation from the state government through the water supply and reliability legislation. The process adopted in consideration, I suppose I'm reiterating, we received the applications through the year. I'm led to believe there's approximately 30 requests for application for extension of our declared service area across the region, so that's across all water supply schemes. And we've applied the rationale that are included in the report before you in consideration of each. Each of these schemes does have its inherent shortcomings, as we've explained in detail for Proston, and as you've seen and prioritised in relation to Kingaroy's scheme. Regardless of that, we have applied those protocols where it's feasible and economic to connect. And there are a series of maps identifying the changes to the declared service area, which you consider annually. So this is the annual opportunity to do so. We're happy to run through the details of those, and I would point out that we will amend the Proston plan in relationship to the recommendation that you've just made in relation to the Proston scheme. But other than that, we would be presenting those changes as detailed in the report, and the officers would be happy to take you through the specifics of those extensions. Perhaps it's worth, Mr. Mayor, our manager explaining the protocols of where those extensions have occurred, or Steve. There are a number of cases that I alluded to earlier where connection is quite easy and quite close, so i.e., less than 30 metres away, etc.
Thank you, Acting GM. So I suppose first question on behalf of committee is, are we recommending here any extensions to the declared service areas? And if we are, then I think council will want to know about where they are. If we could address that, thank you. Thanks,
Based
Steve.
on the changes, councillors, the only extension which will be proposed is based on the last motion to include that additional lot for Proston Rural in the Bluff Zone, which will be an extension to the plan or map on page 327.
Steve, there are no other extensions to what's existing right now.
No, that's right.
Okay, that hasn't been previously resolved. Right, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
I understand that. My concern is just that Jed has said there's been, GM Brennan has said there's been 30 requests of council over the period of 12 months across the region, obviously, to increase our declared service area. So I probably want to understand, we're recommending not to increase our service area, regardless of the 30 requests that we've received. Okay, so, and I'm imagining from the report and what I've read, we are deciding not to do that because it will trigger various renewals and costs and things across the network. Yes. So before I could make this decision, I probably just want to understand those requests for application better. And I understand that might take more than just our afternoon this afternoon. So I'm probably going to move a motion just to leave this lay on the table, Mr. Mayor, until the next infrastructure meeting, if we can.
If you could. The only question, is there any statutory timeframe that you fellows have to adhere to? Yeah, no, okay.
Okay, so we've got the procedural motion from Councillor Schumacher. I'm actually happy to second that because I think that's a really good point. We need some more information on which of these applicants and what's the impact on that. So I'm happy to second that. Let's go to the vote then. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. The matter will now lay on the table until the next Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting. Thank you for bringing the report, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, that was the final item on the agenda for today's Standing Committee meeting. Mr. CEO, thank you. Thank you to everybody for attending and for your participation. I'll now call the meeting to close at 12:52 p.m. and trust that everyone has an enjoyable rest of day. Thank you.